Every day, you receive 70 billion gift packs. Red envelopes, but you only have 1 minute to open them. Just how many can you claim in 60 seconds? At that moment, Chen Fan was sitting across from a young woman at a matchmaking date, discussing the possibility of marriage. Suddenly, his phone buzzed violently, and a strange notification popped up on the screen. Ding! You have received 70 billion red envelopes. Claim them now? Chen Fan could not help laughing. 70 billion red envelopes? Did that mean even every newborn baby in the world had sent him money? These ridiculous ads were getting more shameless by the day. He was about to close it, but he was bored out of his mind. Out of curiosity, he casually tapped confirm. He wanted to see what other tricks this garbage app had up its sleeve, if only to kill time. The next second, the screen flashed red, and the first red envelope appeared in the center. Chen Fan tapped it immediately. Ding! Congratulations! You have received 19.999 yuan. A second red envelope popped up right after it. He tapped again. Ding! Congratulations! You have received 99 yuan. Then another red envelope appeared. Chen Fan raised an eyebrow and thought, is this just a mindless game where you keep tapping the screen? How boring! He was about to close the app when his phone suddenly vibrated twice. 2 bank messages appeared at once. China Merchants Bank. At 12.00, 19.999 yuan was deposited into your account. China Merchants Bank. At 12.00, 99 yuan was deposited into your account. Chen Fan's heart abruptly sped up. He froze. The amounts in the messages were exactly the same as the rewards from the red envelopes. This was not some scam ad. It was real money, deposited directly into his bank account. Shock and excitement surged through him at once. His heart pounded as his fingers began flying across the screen. Ding! Congratulations! You have received 29.999 yuan. Congratulations! You have received 2.000 yuan. Ding! Congratulations! You have received professional level driving skills. These elite driving skills will make you even more charismatic. Congratulations! You have received 5 yuan. Deposit notifications from his mobile banking app kept sounding one after another. Chen Fan was completely fired up, tapping so fast that his fingers seemed to blur through the air. He was now 100% certain that all of this was real. Sitting across from him, Xiao Xia frowned and glanced irritably at his phone. Her eyes happened to land on the line that read received 5 yuan, and her expression instantly turned cold. She considered herself a beautiful woman with an excellent education and a high income. Yet here she was sitting right in front of Chen Fan, and instead of taking the chance to impress her, he was busy scrambling for a few pathetic red envelopes worth only a couple of yuan. Xiao Xia shot to her feet and said coldly, I think you understand by now that we're simply not compatible. I have something else to do later, so I'll be leaving. With that, she refused to stay even 1 second longer. She picked up her purse, turned around, and walked away. Just then, Chen Fan's phone chimed again. Ding! Congratulations! You have received a Lamborghini Aventador. Chen Fan was about to keep tapping, but the time on his phone had already changed to 12.01. A new message immediately appeared on the screen. Notice: 23 hours and 59 minutes remain until the next round of red envelopes. For every 10.000 yuan you spend, you will immediately receive 1 additional red envelope. Chen Fan slowly slipped his phone into his pocket, only for his fingers to brush against something cold and hard. He pulled it out and discovered a car key bearing the emblem of a bull. A Lamborghini key. The key to the Lamborghini the system had just awarded him had actually appeared directly in his pocket. This system was incredible. Xiao Xia had not gone far. When she looked back and saw Chen Fan still staring at his phone, she became even more convinced that he was gloating over the few yuan he had just snatched. She mocked him inwardly and hurried out of the restaurant. The moment she reached the entrance, Xiao Xia stopped dead. A crowd had gathered outside the restaurant, and everyone was staring at an outrageously sleek supercar. Oh my god, that's a Lamborghini, and it's one of the expensive models. It has to cost at least 10 million yuan. That silver gray finish is insane. It looks incredible. A boldly dressed influencer was posing for photos in front of the car. Xiao Xia stared at the supercar, unable to suppress her envy and jealousy. Just then, she saw Chen Fan walk out of the restaurant, and impatience immediately spread across her face. She had already made herself perfectly clear. Why was this poor man still following her outside? Xiao Xia deliberately waved the BMW key in her hand and said arrogantly, I drove here in my BMW. I don't need you to give me a ride. She was clearly reminding Chen Fan to recognize the gap between them. She could afford a BMW, while he probably could not even afford one of its tires. Chen Fan lifted his eyes and asked calmly, "When did I ever say I was going to drive you?" As soon as he finished speaking, he took out the Lamborghini key and casually pressed the button. Beep, beep. The lights of the silver gray supercar worth more than 10 million yuan flashed on, and its horn sounded once. Everyone around them was stunned. Chen Fan strode over to the supercar, opened the scissor door, and calmly settled into the driver's seat. He rarely drove at all, much less a top-tier supercar. Yet the moment he sat behind the wheel, the professional driving skills awarded by the system took effect. Every button and control felt completely familiar, as though he had been driving this car for years. When the influencer posing in front of the car saw him get behind the wheel, her eyes lit up. She hurried to the window and asked in a sweet voice, "Hey, handsome, want to get dinner sometime?" Chen Fan did not even look at her. "Sorry, I have somewhere to be. Don't leave." "Handsome, wait. At least give me your number. Come on, just give me your number." The woman kept knocking on the window and calling after him, but Chen Fan ignored her. He rolled up the window, started the car, and pressed down on the accelerator. With a deafening roar of the engine, the Lamborghini shot onto the street like a silver-gray rocket and vanished from sight in seconds. Xiao Xia witnessed the entire scene from beginning to end. She was completely dumbfounded, her mind going blank. Chen Fan had really driven away in a supercar worth more than 10 million yuan. Only a few minutes earlier, this man had been sitting across from her, sincerely participating in their matchmaking date, and she had rejected him to his face. Had she simply nodded and said yes, perhaps she would never have needed to work again. She could have stayed home, enjoyed life, and spent money however she pleased. A wave of crushing regret swept over her, and her heart seemed to sink into an abyss. Just then, her phone rang. With a numb expression, Xiao Xia answered. Her mother, Chen Minfen, spoke from the other end. "Xia Xia, how did it go? Did you meet him?" "I did," Xiao Xia answered mechanically. "How did you feel about him? Don't force yourself if you don't like him. Just make things clear." "From what I heard, his family is very ordinary." Clutching her phone, Xiao Xia stared blankly at the empty street, her lips trembling slightly. "His family is ordinary?" After a moment of silence, she asked, "What exactly do his parents do?" Her mother replied, "They used to work at the same factory as me. Later, I heard they opened a tiny clothing store. You can decide for yourself." Xiao Xia hung up immediately. She stared in the direction the Lamborghini had disappeared, and a cold smile of supposed understanding appeared on her face. So that was it. Chen Fan must have rented an expensive supercar specifically for this matchmaking date so he could put on a show and pretend to be rich. How ridiculous. A poor man was still a poor man. Wearing expensive clothes could never turn him into a king. She spat in the direction of the influencer who had been taking pictures, thinking the two of them were clearly cut from the same cloth. Then she got into her BMW and drove away. Meanwhile, Chen Fan was driving the Lamborghini one-handed down the street. The roar of the supercar was so powerful that pedestrians turned to look wherever he passed. He parked in a public lot and took the vehicle registration papers from the glove compartment. The owner's name was printed clearly on the document, Chen Fan. Chen Fan touched his face and could not help wondering, is this really like one of those online novels, a system capable of completely changing my life? The moment the thought crossed his mind, a translucent screen appeared in front of him. He reached out and tapped it lightly. Ding! The system has been successfully activated. Beginner's gift pack issued. A large amount of information about the system's functions immediately appeared on the screen. Host, Chen Fan. Current level, LV1. Level privilege. Every time you take a breath, 1 yuan will be added to your account. All reward funds come from completely legal sources and may be used freely in any situation. Chen Fan stared at the screen and stopped breathing for a moment. Now this was what it truly meant to make money without lifting a finger. He did a quick calculation. Even if he spent all 24 hours of the day doing nothing but breathing and sleeping, he would still earn 60 to 70,000 yuan a day. That came to 2 million yuan a month and more than 24 million yuan a year. And this was only the lowest level, LV1. How terrifying would his income become once the system continued leveling up? A delighted smile tugged at Chen Fan's lips, and he immediately opened the beginner's gift pack. Ding! Congratulations! You have received the Charisma Aura. Charisma increased by 5 points, with a chance to trigger the love at first sight effect. Ding! Congratulations! You have received a 10x cashback card. A warm current quickly flowed through his entire body. Chen Fan looked down at his faded, worn-out jeans. Without hesitation, he stepped on the accelerator and drove toward the most expensive luxury shopping center in Jiangbei City. Mall. The moment he walked through the main entrance, a tall female sales associate greeted him enthusiastically. As the saying went, clothes made the man. When Chen Fan stepped out of the fitting room wearing the latest high-end tailored suit recommended by the associate, his charisma score shot straight up to 92. Chen Fan casually rolled his shoulders. Not bad. It fits pretty well. How much is it? The sales associate smiled. Sir, the complete outfit is 48.000 yuan. Chen Fan frowned as soon as he heard the price. The associate's heart sank, and she sighed inwardly. Damn, she had misjudged him. He was probably another man who could not afford anything once he saw the price, but had deliberately entered a luxury store to pretend he was wealthy. Yet the next second, Chen Fan muttered with mild dissatisfaction. Only a little over 40,000? That's so cheap. Fine, just charge my card. The professional smile on the associate's face froze instantly. What was going on? So he had not frowned because it was too expensive. He had frowned because it was too cheap? Shocked, she accepted his bank card with slightly trembling fingers and swiped it through the POS terminal. Ding! A purchase of 48.000 yuan has been detected. Use the 10x cashback card? Chen Fan answered silently. Use it. Ding! 10x cashback successful. The system has upgraded to LV2. All base earnings have doubled. You will now receive 2 yuan for every breath. Before Chen Fan could fully process the information, the phone in his pocket began vibrating like crazy. China Merchants Bank. 480.000 yuan has been deposited into your account. At the same time, the rule that awarded 1 red envelope for every 10.000 yuan spent was triggered, and 4 red envelopes popped up in succession. Cash rewards of 20,000, 3,000, and other amounts poured into his account like rain. As he watched his balance soar, Chen Fan grinned from ear to ear. The sales associate beside him still had not recovered from her shock. Holding the bank card in both hands, she offered it back to him. Sir, your card. Chen Fan did not even look at her. He simply pointed at the racks. Those 2 over there. And that entire set. Yes, those. Find 10 more outfits in my size and wrap everything up. The associate sucked in a sharp breath, her breathing quickening. He was genuinely rich. He had to be some ultra-wealthy man who deliberately dressed plainly to experience ordinary life. She assembled the outfits as quickly as possible and reported excitedly. Sir, the total is 232.100 yuan. I can ask my manager to waive the final 2.100 yuan. Please give me a moment. No need. Chen Fan casually waved a hand. His tone as relaxed as if they were discussing dinner plans. Keep the extra 2.100 yuan as your tip. At this point, that amount of money truly looked like nothing more than a string of numbers to him. The associate had provided good service, and the clothes she recommended were comfortable. Giving her a small reward was nothing more than an amusing little gesture to Chen Fan. The associate's eyes widened. Overwhelmed with excitement, she bowed deeply at a 90-degree angle, her cheeks bright red. Thank you, sir. The instant his card was swiped again, system notifications erupted wildly in his mind. Ding! The system has upgraded to LV3. This time, the reward was even more astonishing. LV3 privilege. The host will receive 5 yuan for every breath. By the simplest calculation, even if Chen Fan did absolutely nothing all day, he could now earn several million yuan with ease. At the same time, red envelopes kept appearing on his phone screen. Spending more than 230.000 yuan had triggered a total of 23 red envelopes. Without so much as blinking, Chen Fan opened every one of them. Cash rewards of 10,000 or 20,000 yuan had become the least impressive bonuses. The truly terrifying rewards were the god-tier skills hidden inside the red envelopes. Aesthetics of violence raises the host's physical fitness, strength, speed, and reflexes to an elite level. Even when facing more than 100 opponents at once, the host can remain completely composed. And every combat move will combine overwhelming power with visual elegance. Gentleman God of Wine. No matter how much alcohol the host drinks, he will never truly become incapacitated. Every movement will also radiate an irresistible masculine charm. Chen Fan clenched his fists and clearly felt explosive power surging through his body. This felt incredible. After buying the clothes, he drove the Lamborghini back to the shabby room he had been renting. At midnight that night, the system deposited more than 10,000 yuan in base earnings into his bank account right on schedule. At noon the following day, the red envelope system once again demonstrated its terrifying power. No sooner had 20,000 yuan in cash arrived than several heavyweight rewards followed. One limited edition Vacheron Constantine wristwatch. The entire residential building A of Wanjiao Lake residence. Chen Fan's finger stopped in midair, and he froze on the spot. Wanjiao Lake residence was one of the most prestigious school district developments in Jiangbei City. Average prices had long exceeded 50,000 yuan per square meter, yet the system had just given him an entire building. Before he could recover from the shock, the air in front of him suddenly rippled. Clatter! A huge pile of property ownership certificates and two massive rings of keys fell out of thin air, forming a small mountain on the floor. Chen Fan casually opened the first ownership certificate. Unit 101. Building A, owner, Chen Fan. Then the second. Unit 102. Building A, owner, Chen Fan. Every document after that was the same. The building had 33 floors, with 4 apartments on each floor. A total of 132 premium school district homes. Every one of them was now registered solely under Chen Fan's name. Real estate worth billions of yuan lay scattered carelessly around his feet. Chen Fan instinctively reached into his pocket, intending to pull out a cigarette to calm himself. Instead, he drew out a limited edition Vacheron Constantine wristwatch gleaming with a cool metallic luster. He looked at the luxury watch in his hand, then at the ownership certificates covering the floor, and an odd smile appeared on his face. In the end, he found a cheap plastic bag, stuffed the incredibly valuable certificates, keys, and watch into it, and carried the bag downstairs. The moment he reached the ground floor, he ran into his mean and greedy landlady, Wang Xiqin. Wang Xiqin looked him up and down with shifty eyes and forced out a fake smile. "Little Chen, you didn't go to work today?" "No," Chen Fan answered calmly. This woman routinely overcharged him for utilities and cut off his water or electricity at the slightest excuse. Chen Fan had long planned to move out the instant his lease expired. Seeing that he seemed to have free time, Wang Xiqin immediately ordered, "Perfect. My toilet is clogged. Hurry over and unclog it for me." Chen Fan raised an eyebrow and replied coldly, "I'm not doing it." Then he continued walking. Wang Xiqin had never been dismissed like that before. She grabbed his arm and shouted, "Who are you pretending to be? Some rich young master? A low-class man like you who never even went to college was born to do dirty work like this." Hearing her spew nonsense, Chen Fan sharply flung her hand away. The movement was so fast that the plastic bag tore open, sending stacks of red property certificates and strings of keys spilling across the floor. Wang Xiqin froze at first. Then, after recognizing the certificates, she burst out laughing. She mocked him with utter contempt. "You don't even have a degree, yet some scam real estate agency hired you to sell other people's homes? You really think someone like you can make a sale?" In her narrow mind, a poor tenant like Chen Fan, someone who endured her lectures every month over a few hundred yuan in utility fees, could never own that many homes even if he worked for the rest of his life. Chen Fan sneered, saying even half a sentence more to such a hopelessly ignorant woman would be a waste of time. He bent down, collected the certificates and keys, packed them up again, and strode toward the Lamborghini Aventador parked by the road. The scissor door rose. Chen Fan got in and stepped on the accelerator. With a deep, ferocious roar, the supercar quickly sped away from the rundown residential complex. At that moment, Wang Xiqin's overweight son, Li Hu, happened to come outside. He stared at the receding taillights, his small eyes nearly popping out of his head with excitement. "Oh my God! A Lamborghini Aventador! Someone in a dump like our neighborhood is driving a legendary supercar like that? That's incredible." Seeing her son so excited, Wang Xiqin curled her lip dismissively. "It's just a car. Once you find a job, Mom will put up 200,000 yuan and buy you something similar." Liu stared at his mother as though she had lost her mind and yelled, 200,000? What kind of fantasy are you living in? Even 10 or 20 times that wouldn't be enough. That's a top-tier supercar. It costs at least 10 million yuan after taxes and fees." "What?" Wang Xiqin's mouth fell open, and it felt as though a thunderclap had exploded inside her head. She suddenly remembered that the clothes Chen Fan was wearing today came from the same luxury brand her son had admired at the mall a few days ago but could not remotely afford. Then she thought of the property certificates that had just scattered across the floor. A terrifying possibility that nearly stopped her breathing entered her mind. Could all those homes really belong to Chen Fan? Wang Xichin's legs began trembling, and she sucked in a cold breath. Meanwhile, after inspecting several luxury apartments, Chen Fan carried the bag full of documents into a nearby real estate agency that handled listings in Wanjiao Lake residence. He lightly tapped the reception desk. "I have an entire building to rent out. Get your manager." A broker in black-rimmed glasses did not hear him clearly and assumed he had mentioned only one apartment. Wearing a practiced fake smile, he said, "Don't worry, sir. I'm responsible for this neighborhood. I'll help you find the best qualified tenant as quickly as possible and secure the highest possible rent." Chen Fan could not be bothered to waste words. He lifted the bag and dumped its contents onto the desk. Clatter. More than 100 property ownership certificates and strings of keys spread across the entire desk like a sudden downpour. The broker, who had been smiling falsely a second earlier, stared so hard his eyes nearly fell out. His whole body went rigid with shock. He stammered for a long moment before managing a complete sentence. Please have a seat. I'll get the manager immediately." Before long, a young female manager in a fitted business suit hurried out. She had delicate features, a tall figure, and flawless curves. If the system had rated her, her beauty score would have been at least 94. "Hello, I'm Han Tian, East Jiangbei Regional Manager for Lijiao Real Estate." Han Tian handed over her business card while quietly studying Chen Fan. He stood nearly 6'1", wore a high-end tailored suit, and had an exceptionally attractive face. It was almost impossible to look away from him. She had already heard that a mysterious tycoon had purchased all of Building A at Wanjiao Lake residence in cash. Never in her dreams had she imagined that the mysterious buyer would be such a young and handsome man. Realizing that she had been staring at Chen Fan for quite a while, Han Tian blushed faintly. "My surname is Chen." Chen Fan picked up his teacup and took a casual sip. Han Tian quickly collected herself and smiled as she introduced the agency's advantages, service process, and policies for major clients. Chen Fan did not listen very closely. He merely nodded from time to time. "That's fine. We'll do it that way. Starting now, you'll be responsible for all of these apartments." Han Tian froze. Chen Fan had not even asked about the rental rates, commission percentage, or specific marketing plan before casually entrusting her with a portfolio worth billions of yuan. Her beautiful face flushed again, and her voice unconsciously softened. "Thank you for your trust, Mr. Chen. I promise I won't disappoint you." The contract was prepared quickly, and both sides signed it. At that exact moment, an exhausted Xiao Xiao walked into the agency. She had spent the entire day under the blazing sun visiting more than a dozen real estate agencies, trying to find an apartment near a top school for her younger brother, but had gotten nowhere. She asked hopefully, "Excuse me, do you still have any apartments available for rent at Wanjiao Lake residence?" The moment she finished speaking, the conference room door opened. Chen Fan had finished signing the contract and walked out. Xiao Xiao recognized him at once, and the contempt in her heart immediately surged again. So his claim that he drove a Lamborghini really had all been an act. This man was no tycoon. He was merely a low-level employee at this real estate agency. For yesterday's matchmaking date, he had probably spent several months' salary renting that supercar. What a hopelessly poor man obsessed with saving face. She was about to roll her eyes and make a sarcastic remark when the broker who had served Chen Fan ran over excitedly and announced, "Ma'am, you're incredibly lucky. See that gentleman? He just entrusted us with an entire building he owns at Wanjiao Lake residence. There are still plenty of vacant units, so you can choose whichever floor and layout you prefer." The entire agency fell silent in an instant. It was so quiet that even the drop of a needle would have been clearly audible. Xiao Xia's mouth slowly fell open, and she stood frozen as if struck by lightning. Had she heard correctly? Chen Fan owned an entire building at Wanjiao Lake residence and intended to rent out every apartment in it. That was Wanjiao Lake residence. Homes there now cost around 50,000 yuan per square meter. Even an ordinary apartment was worth roughly 5 million yuan. How much, then, would an entire building be worth? Xiao Xia felt dizzy, and the Lamborghini from yesterday suddenly flashed through her mind. From beginning to end, Chen Fan had never been an ordinary man. He was an incredibly wealthy tycoon who had hidden himself well. The ridiculous part was that only yesterday, she had acted superior and rejected him to his face. Had she lowered her pride back then and made even the slightest effort to hold on to Chen Fan, would she now be running all over the city under the blazing sun, sweating through her clothes, just to find a school district apartment for her brother? Regret burned through her chest like fire. Chen Fan merely gave her a cold glance, slid his hands into his pockets, and walked toward the exit without looking back. He no longer felt anything for a snobbish, materialistic, self-important woman like her. Xiao Xia's eyes reddened, and she nearly burst into tears. She hurried after him and shouted, "Chen Fan, wait!" The only answer she received was the cold silhouette of Chen Fan disappearing into the distance. Standing nearby, Han Tian had witnessed the entire spectacle. She noticed Chen Fan's undisguised disgust toward Xiao Xia and seized the opportunity to rub salt into the wound. "Ma'am, do you still want to rent an apartment at Wanjia Lake Residence or not?" "Yes, I want one." Xiao Xia barely steadied herself and gritted her teeth. No matter what happened, she had to secure a school district apartment today. Han Tian smiled faintly and immediately poured cold water on her hopes. "I'm sorry. The only unit currently available is apartment 104 in Building A. The monthly rent is 30,000 yuan. Of course, she was doing it on purpose. Han Tian had clearly seen how much Chen Fan despised this woman. Chen Fan was her most important client. Not only was he young, handsome, and extremely wealthy, but he had also trusted her without reservation. Since her client disliked this woman, Han Tian did not mind teaching her a lesson on his behalf. 30,000 yuan? Are you robbing people?" Xiao Xia shrieked. "A comparable neighborhood next door charges only 3,000 a month, and that broker just said there were plenty of empty units. Why is apartment 104 suddenly the only one left when it's my turn?" Han Tian rolled her eyes at an unhurried pace and replied sarcastically, "Our office has plenty of brokers. How much inside information could he possibly know? All the better units were reserved long ago. Is it too expensive for you? Then turn left when you leave and go rent in that 3,000 yuan neighborhood you mentioned." After saying that, she could not even be bothered to spare Xiao Xia another glance before turning away. Xiao Xia stomped her feet in fury and was about to cause another scene when the phone in her pocket suddenly rang. Her mother, Chen Minfen, spoke anxiously from the other end. "Xia Xia, have you secured an apartment at Wanjia Lake Residence for your brother yet? If you delay any longer, he'll miss the enrollment window for Jiangbei No. 1 High School." Xiao Xia's face shifted between pale and flushed. She stammered, "Mom, the apartment. I found one." "You really found one? Wonderful. Sign the lease immediately. Don't let anyone else take it." Chen Minfen's voice became excited. "It doesn't matter if the rent is expensive. Even if we have to sell things, we must rent it. Nothing can interfere with your brother's education. His future is more important than anything." Her mother's tone left no room for argument, crushing the last bit of resistance in Xiao Xia. She could only grit her teeth and say, "Fine, I'll rent it." After a brief pause, she asked resentfully, "Mom, didn't you say yesterday that Chen Fan's family was ordinary? You said his parents only ran a tiny, unimpressive clothing shop by the roadside." "Yes. Why?" Xiao Xia gave a bitter laugh inwardly. An unimpressive little clothing shop? Perhaps this was what hidden wealth looked like. Who knew whether that so-called tiny shop was actually backed by a massive clothing empire? After ending the call, Xiao Xia was so furious that she nearly ground her molars to pieces. Even so, she had no choice but to swallow her pride, walk back to Han Tian, and say quietly, "I'll take apartment 104 in Building A." Meanwhile, Chen Fan had already finished a lavish meal at the Hilton, booked a top presidential suite, and settled in for a comfortable afternoon nap. He had already packed up the few belongings in his old, shabby rental room. Now that he had somewhere far more comfortable to stay, why would he ever return to suffer there? He slept exceptionally well. By the time Chen Fan opened his eyes again, it was already 5 in the afternoon. He picked up his phone and discovered that his high school class group chat, which had seemed dead for centuries, was suddenly exploding with messages. It turned out that the class was holding a reunion at 7 that evening at Fenglai Hotel in Jiangbei. Everyone who had time had been invited. Chen Fan had no other plans for the evening, so he decided to stop by and see a few old friends he had gotten along with in school. Expecting heavy rush hour traffic, he left the Hilton early. The roads were indeed packed, but he had forgotten one thing: he was not driving an ordinary family car. He was driving a Lamborghini Aventador worth more than 10 million yuan. The surrounding vehicles automatically kept their distance from the moving work of art, afraid that even the slightest scratch might bankrupt them. Combined with Chen Fan's professional-level driving skills, the congested road seemed to transform into a private lane just for him. As a result, he calmly arrived at private room 666 of Fenglai Hotel before 6:40. The moment he entered, a round-faced, heavy-set man rubbed his eyes and cried out in disbelief. "Oh my God! Is that Chen Fan?" Once Chen Fan recognized him, he laughed and teased. "Chen Liang, looks like life's been treating you well. You practically gain weight just standing in the wind. Remember how skinny you were in school? Time really spares no one. It really is Chen Fan." Chen Liang slapped his thigh excitedly. "We haven't seen each other in years, and you've changed so much. You're so handsome now that I almost didn't recognize you." As the two spoke, a mocking voice came from the side. "This must be the first time since graduation that nearly the whole class has gotten together, right?" Wang Haoqi approached with an affected air and a fake smile. "I heard you started working right after high school. So how's it going? How much do you make a month now?" Chen Fan could not be bothered to give a serious answer. "Enough to get by. A few thousand yuan." The instant he heard a few thousand yuan, Wang Haoqi's face lit up. His sense of superiority practically overflowed from his expression. "Then make sure you eat as much as you can tonight. This one table might cost as much as an entire month of your hard-earned salary." In Wang Haoqi's eyes, what did it matter that Chen Fan was handsome? At the end of the day, he was still just an ordinary worker earning a few thousand yuan a month. Chen Fan raised an eyebrow slightly. Of course he heard the ridicule in those words, but this was a class reunion, and he did not want to humiliate anyone the moment he arrived. So he merely smiled and ignored it. While they were still talking, the private room door opened again. Yang Wenjing, covered in heavy makeup and designer labels, strutted in like a proud peacock with her arm linked around a pot-bellied middle-aged man. Compliments instantly filled the room. "Wow, isn't that Yang Wenjing, one of the prettiest girls in our class? Look at all those designer brands. Wenjing, you look younger every year. You've been hiding such a beautiful life from us. Hurry and introduce the big boss standing beside you." Yang Wenjing basked in their praise. The thick powder on her face looked ready to crack off with her smile. "Thank you, everyone. This is my husband, Du Lei." Sitting in the corner, Chen Fan calmly looked at Yang Wenjing, then at her husband, whose stomach appeared 10 months pregnant, and quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Back in school, so many girls had liked Chen Fan that they could have filled several tables at a card hall. Yang Wenjing had pursued him more aggressively than anyone. Fortunately, he had been focused only on his studies at the time and had mercilessly rejected every one of them. Looking at Yang Wenjing now, Chen Fan felt nothing but relief that he had escaped just in time. At that moment, light footsteps sounded outside the door. Then Qin Yuxuan entered the room like a breath of clear spring water. Her skin was fair and flawless, and her long black hair fell like a waterfall. Although she wore only simple casual clothes, nothing could hide her delicate features or striking figure. The moment she appeared, it was as if even the stale, restless air in the room had been washed clean. Even Chen Fan, who had now seen plenty of beautiful women, could not help looking at her a second time. "Oh my God, Qin Yuxuan, the top student in our class, actually came. Now this reunion really has an honored guest." A few people who love stirring up drama immediately began whispering. "Do you remember the old rumors? I think Qin Yuxuan and Yang Wenjing both like Chen Fan. That was years ago. Haven't you seen Yang Wenjing? She married a big boss." Qin Yuxuan went to a major city for further study and became a true academic star. Now look at Chen Fan. He started working right after high school and probably has only a few thousand yuan in his pocket. How could he possibly be worthy of either of those beauties? After those words, several people in the room looked at Chen Fan strangely, as though merely standing near him would lower their own status. Qin Yuxuan was the only exception. After entering, she looked around the room, and her gaze lingered on Chen Fan for 2 seconds. Their eyes met, and she gave him a natural, gentle smile. That smile made all the fake enthusiasm around them seem dull by comparison. Before long, one sumptuous dish after another was brought to the table. Someone took the initiative to liven things up. "After all these years, we've finally reunited. Brothers and sisters, raise your glasses. Cheers." Glasses clinked together, and the class reunion filled with showing off and false friendliness officially began. They had barely taken a few bites when Jin Song walked in wearing his trademark plaid shirt and an exaggeratedly confident expression. He said nothing at first. Instead, he slapped his BMW key onto the table with a loud smack, making sure everyone saw it. Only then did he press his palms together theatrically. Sorry, everyone. Traffic was terrible, so I'm late. I'll punish myself with a drink. With that, he downed the entire glass in one gulp. Wang Haoqi immediately seized the chance to flatter him. Not bad. Jin Song, you're driving a BMW now. Jin Song struggled to suppress his pride and pretended not to care. It's only an ordinary BMW 5 Series. Nothing special. A BMW 5 Series is still a luxury car. Wang Haoqi continued praising him. Jin Song waved a hand in feigned modesty. A 5 Series doesn't count as a real luxury car. You have no idea what I just saw in the parking lot. There's a Lamborghini parked outside. One classmate's eyes widened. Seriously? Someone in Jiangbei drives a top-tier supercar like that? Of course. Jin Song grew so excited that one might have thought the car belonged to him. It costs at least 10 million yuan. I was stunned when I saw it. I have no idea which mega-rich tycoon owns it. My BMW has only 252 horsepower. But that Lamborghini has a V12 with a full 700 horsepower. It's terrifyingly fast. Press the gas and it practically flies on the wind. Sitting in the corner, Chen Fan watched him perform and nearly burst out laughing. After bragging about the Lamborghini, Jin Song turned and noticed Qin Yuxuan sitting in the corner. He immediately carried his glass over to her. Well, look who it is. Beautiful Yuxuan. I never expected you to come. It's been years. And you're even prettier than before. Qin Yuxuan barely looked at him. She offered a faint smile out of politeness, then ignored him. After being coldly dismissed, Jin Song hurriedly shifted targets and turned his attention to the heavily made-up Yang Wenjing and her husband. Dulei. Wenjing. Boss, your presence brings honor to the entire reunion. Come, let me toast the two of you. Jin Song raised his glass with a sycophantic fake smile. Wang Haoqi deliberately asked. Jin Song, you know Boss Du? Of course. Jin Song said quickly. Boss Du is a major entrepreneur around here. I was able to buy this BMW only because he sent some business my way. Boss Du himself usually drives a Porsche. At the word Porsche, everyone seemed to stop breathing for a moment before erupting into another round of amazement and praise. The pot-bellied Dulei forced a calm smile. A Porsche is just an ordinary car for getting around. How could it compare to that Lamborghini in the parking lot? But truly wealthy people these days don't play only with cars. They're more interested in watches. As he spoke, he deliberately raised his wrist and showed everyone the gleaming gold Rolex. Jin Song immediately caught on and began praising him loudly again. A gold Rolex. Boss Du is absolutely right. Ordinary people only know how to look at cars. Truly wealthy men care about watches. Compared with someone at your level, the rest of us are nothing. The surrounding classmates stared with shining eyes and began speculating about how much the gold watch cost. Dulei could barely hide the pride on his face. Yet he continued putting on an act. It wasn't expensive. It's just an ordinary Rolex. Hirue gave him a thumbs up. Brother Du is rich. And Wenjing is beautiful. You two are a match made in heaven. To flatter the couple, Hirue suddenly shifted the conversation and aimed directly at Chen Fan. Speaking of the old days, does everyone remember Chen Fan? Just because he was fairly good-looking, he spent every day hovering around Yang Wenjing and shamelessly chasing her. Luckily, Wenjing was smart enough to ignore him. To curry favor with a wealthy man, Hirue had completely abandoned his dignity and turned the past upside down. Yang Wenjing had clearly been the one chasing Chen Fan until he rejected her. Yet now they claimed Chen Fan had harassed her. Yang Wenjing's vanity swelled as she listened. She immediately lifted her chin. Why would I ever have accepted him? A handsome face can't pay the bills. My destined partner was obviously my Dulei. She deliberately swung the glittering Gucci bag in her hand and cast Chen Fan a look of extreme contempt. Her expression seemed to say, "You acted so aloof back then. But now, standing before me, you are beneath even an ordinary poor man." These people had mocked Chen Fan again and again. They clearly saw him as an easy target they could push around however they pleased. Chen Fan smiled faintly and completely abandoned any thought of sparing his former classmate's embarrassment. He leisurely rubbed his chin, drew out his words, and dropped a bombshell in front of everyone. I chased Yang Wenjing back then? That's an interesting claim. Who was it who kept throwing herself at me and practically begged to show me the most private part of her body? Something no outsider should ever have known about. Chen Fan paused, wearing a half-smile. If I remember correctly, there were 3 rather distinctive moles there. Boom! Dulei's face instantly turned dark with rage. Those 3 moles were Yang Wenjing's most intimate physical feature. She had always acted pure and conservative in front of Dulei. Yet something like that had happened behind his back. Yang Wenjing panicked completely and grabbed Dulei's arm. Honey, don't listen to his nonsense. He's deliberately making up filthy lies about me. Dulei violently shook off her hand and turned away with a grim expression, refusing to hear her explanation. Seeing the wealthy couple's relationship on the verge of exploding in public, Hirue rushed forward to smooth things over and turn the attack back on Chen Fan. Come on. Yang Wenjing was one of the prettiest girls in our class. Of course you'd feel bitter after failing to win her over. Everyone was only talking about the past. Why are you being so petty and inventing vicious lies just because you're embarrassed? Facing this shameless flatterer, Chen Fan did not even blink. Fine. Since everyone enjoys talking about the past, I'll share another big secret. Do you remember Auntie Sheila, the dormitory supervisor? Hirue had a very special relationship with her back then. Their romance was practically legendary. Chen Fan looked at Hirue and deliberately asked with a smile. Hirue, after all these years, are the 2 of you still happily together? The entire private room erupted, and every eye snapped toward Hirue. Auntie Sheila, the dormitory supervisor, had been much older than them and very plain looking. No one had imagined that Hirue's taste back then was so unusual that he would even pursue her. At that moment, one of Hirue's former roommates suddenly remembered something and slapped his thigh. Now I finally understand. We used to sneak out at midnight to play computer games, and when we returned to the dorm at 2 in the morning, the main door would still be open. I always thought Auntie Sheila had forgotten to lock it. Now I realized she was leaving it open specifically for Hirue. Hirue's entire face turned crimson. Angry and terrified, he pointed at Chen Fan and shouted, "That's nonsense. You're lying." Yet his panicked expression and trembling voice only convinced everyone that the story was probably true. The atmosphere in the room was about to spiral completely out of control when someone finally stepped in, urged everyone to keep drinking, and tried to smooth things over. After several rounds of alcohol, the gathering gradually returned to something resembling normal. It had to be admitted that Hirue was skilled at ingratiating himself. Before long, he had once again made himself seem like the center of the group. But while he continued bragging, his eyes never stopped looking for trouble. He soon noticed Chen Fan sitting alone in the corner, keeping his distance from everyone else. Chen Fan, why have you been sitting there in silence like you don't have a mouth? Hirue held his wineglass and spoke arrogantly, as though he had not been publicly exposed only moments earlier. He deliberately raised his voice and asked sarcastically, "You started working right after high school, so you must have made plenty of money over the years. What luxury car do you drive now? Tell us and give your old classmates a chance to broaden our horizons." Before Chen Fan could answer, Wang Haoqi jumped in like a rabid dog. Him? Buy a luxury car? On a salary of only a few thousand yuan a month? He probably can't even support himself. Back in school, Chen Fan had been tall, academically gifted, and practically the star of the class. Wang Haoqi had envied him ever since. Now that he finally had a chance to trample Chen Fan beneath his feet, he naturally refused to miss any opportunity to feed his vanity. Only a few thousand yuan a month? Hu Jinsong cried out theatrically, looking as though he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Chen Fan felt that even looking at these clowns was a waste of effort. Childish. Utterly childish. But the more Chen Fan ignored him, the more Hu Jinsong believed he was embarrassed and afraid. Hu Jinsong suddenly pointed at Chen Fan's wrist as though he had discovered treasure. "Hey, aren't you wearing a watch? It looks pretty decent. Take it off and let everyone see it. Give us a chance to learn something." Without looking up, Chen Fan replied coldly, "It's only a watch. What is there to see? Don't be so stingy. We're all old classmates. It'll give us something to talk about. If I accidentally damage it, I'll buy you a new one." Hu Jinsong kept pestering him, and Shen Liang joined in with the others. For Shen Liang's sake, Chen Fan reluctantly removed the astonishingly valuable Vacheron Constantine watch and casually tossed it onto the table. Hu Jinsong picked it up, weighed it in his hand, and pretended to be an expert. "It's fairly heavy." Without even asking Chen Fan's permission, he pulled out his phone and took a picture. "I have a very close friend who's an expert on luxury watches. I'll send him the photo, and he'll tell us immediately whether it's real. He was doing all this merely to show off his connections and seize another chance to humiliate Chen Fan. But a long time passed after he sent the photo, and his friend still did not reply. Chen Liang, meanwhile, kept staring at the watch. Its design was exquisite. He swallowed and could not resist asking, "Chen Fan, this watch must be expensive, right?" Chen Fan answered honestly, "I didn't pay a cent for it." That was completely true, since the watch had been a reward from one of the system's red envelopes. The moment Wang Haoqi heard that, he laughed so hard his stomach nearly cramped. "You didn't pay a cent? Then it must have been a free gift that came with some cheap product." Hu Jinsong immediately showed a disgusted expression and threw the precious watch back onto the table like garbage. "Damn, you made us look at this thing for so long, and it turns out to be a worthless freebie. You should have said so earlier. Aren't free gifts always cheap junk from a street stall? My friend hates counterfeits. That photo might give him a heart attack." After saying that, he vigorously wiped his hands as though the watch carried a virus. Then he adopted the posture of an elder lecturing a junior and said to Chen Fan, "You have to admit when you're behind everyone else. Why wear a fake watch to a class reunion and pretend to have status? Ask anyone here who would wear such a low-quality counterfeit." The snobbish people in the room finally found their chance to agree. They shook their heads and competed to demonstrate how much they despised fake goods. Yang Wenjing certainly was not going to miss the opportunity. She swung her Gucci bag, pressed even closer to Dulé, and said arrogantly, "Exactly. Only poor people use fakes. Look at my Dulé. He would never buy me garbage like that." Listening to these people buzz around his ears like flies, Chen Fan finally lost his patience. He snatched the watch from the table, fastened it back onto his wrist, swept everyone with a sharp gaze, and said in a low, forceful voice, "I like it. What business is it of yours?" He did not shout hysterically, but his voice carried overwhelming pressure. Every sound stopped abruptly, and several faces turned pale. Seeing that the atmosphere had gone wrong, Chen Liang hurriedly changed the subject. "Come on, everyone, let's go to karaoke, sing some songs, and keep the party going." Chen Fan had come only to see a few former classmates who had truly been close to him. None of them had shown up. Enduring the disgusting atmosphere long enough to finish dinner was already more courtesy than these people deserved. As for karaoke, anyone who wanted to go could go without him. Chen Fan refused without hesitation. Coincidentally, Qin Yuxuan also said she had something to do and could not stay any longer. Several men in the room immediately became anxious and tried to persuade her to stay. But Qin Yuxuan had already made up her mind. Chen Fan glanced at her and casually asked out of politeness, "Would you like me to drive you? Then I'll have to trouble you." To his surprise, Qin Yuxuan did not decline. Instead, she smiled and accepted directly. Even Chen Fan was slightly surprised, but since he had already offered, he walked toward the parking lot with her, watching the two of them leave side by side. The jealous people in the room became furious. He's heading toward the taxi area. Is he really planning to put Qin Yuxuan in a taxi? Wang Haoqi spat disdainfully. Yang Wenjing curled her lip as well. How embarrassing to take a taxi. When my husband was courting me, he at least picked me up in a Mercedes or a BMW. Chen Fan really had the nerve to offer. Hu Jinsong stared greedily at Qin Yuxuan's graceful figure from behind and swallowed. What a coincidence. My BMW 5 Series is parked in that direction too. Wang Haoqi immediately understood what he meant and chimed in. How can we let the great beauty of our class ride in some lousy taxi? Jinsong, I think it would be more appropriate for you to drive Yuxuan home in your BMW. Hu Jinsong was ecstatic inside and already thinking about how to use the opportunity to get closer to Qin Yuxuan. Though he pretended to be reserved. "I suppose I can. The parking lot is just ahead." Chen Fan and Qin Yuxuan strolled calmly in front while the group behind them followed and whispered among themselves. Suddenly, someone shrieked like a duck. "Look, there's a supercar over there. I think that's the Lamborghini." Everyone looked in that direction and saw an incredibly sleek Lamborghini parked there with commanding presence. Their eyes went wide. Hu Jinsong immediately seized the chance to show off again. "See it? That's the Aventador I mentioned earlier. My BMW happens to be parked right beside it." At that moment, someone with sharp eyes noticed that Chen Fan was walking straight toward the Lamborghini. What is he trying to do? Wang Haoqi immediately put on a mocking expression. What else? He's obviously going to stand next to it and take a picture. Qin Yuxuan is right beside him, so he has to seize the chance to pretend he's impressive. Yang Wenjing sneered as well. Taking a picture won't be enough. He'll probably touch the car too, then post it on social media and pretend he's driven it. Back then, he was clearly the one pursuing me. Yet he spread rumors that I chased him. A man like that will do anything. Hearing that, Dulé wrapped an arm around Yang Wenjing's waist and comforted her. Don't worry, Wenjing. How could I ever believe anything a man like him says? Look, he really walked up to the car. Oh my God. He's touching the door. The group behind them stopped and stretched their necks, waiting for the real owner to appear and curse Chen Fan out. Hu Jinsong even remained deliberately in place, ready to enjoy every second of Chen Fan's humiliation. But the next second, every smile vanished. Under their disbelieving gazes, Chen Fan calmly opened the supercar worth more than 10 million yuan and got inside with Qin Yushuan. The V12 engine unleashed a thunderous roar. The Lamborghini shot out of the parking lot like a bolt of lightning and disappeared in an instant. The entire parking lot fell into deathly silence. It was as though everyone had been struck by lightning at once. They stood frozen like stone statues. Chen Fan had actually gotten into the Lamborghini. Was that car his? But hadn't he said he earned only a few thousand yuan a month? What a convincing act. Wang Haoqi was the first to recover. Gritting his teeth, he said, he actually rented a car just to show off in front of his old classmates. A single day's rental probably cost him 1 or 2 months of salary. Those words gave everyone something to cling to. Exactly. It has to be rented. With his family background, how could he possibly afford a car like that? As they thought about it, the superiority gradually returned to their faces. Just then, Hu Jinsong's phone suddenly rang. The caller was Qiao Bao, the friend who claimed to be an expert on luxury watches. Hu Jinsong was secretly thrilled. He deliberately switched to speakerphone, preparing to expose Chen Fan's fake watch in front of everyone and further prove that the Lamborghini was rented as well. After all, how could a man who wore a fake watch possibly afford a real supercar? Hey, Qiao Bao, what did you find? That watch I sent you is a worthless fake, right? But Qiao Bao shouted from the other end as though he had lost his mind. Fake? My ass. That thing is unbelievable. Your friend is the real king. That's a limited edition Vacheron Constantin Tour de l'Isle. Only 7 were ever made in the entire world. Its current market value is at least 10 million yuan. And it's not something you can buy just because you have money. Everyone was once again too stunned to speak. Worth 10 million yuan. With only 7 in the world, a supercar could perhaps be rented. But where could anyone rent an ultra-rare watch like that? The truth could not have been clearer. Both the Lamborghini and the watch belonged to Chen Fan. He was not an ordinary worker earning a few thousand yuan a month. He was an immensely wealthy tycoon who had hidden his status extremely well. Staring in the direction the Lamborghini had disappeared, everyone's emotions churned, and their regret nearly drove them insane. Yang Wenjing's legs began trembling. She wanted to slap herself across the face several times. Had she been a little bolder back then and truly won Chen Fan over, wouldn't she now be the woman enjoying the life of an elite billionaire? Hu Jinsong's heart pounded even harder, and cold sweat kept forming on his forehead. When he remembered that he had just thrown a 10 million yuan watch onto the table like garbage, terror chilled his entire body. If that watch had suffered even the tiniest scratch, selling everything he owned, including himself, might not have been enough to pay for it. At that moment, Qin Yushuan sat in the passenger seat of the supercar, curiously studying the luxurious, finely crafted interior with a sweet smile on her face. A car worth more than 10 million yuan. She smiled and sighed. Old classmate, you really gave me the VIP experience today. Thank you. Chen Fan joked casually. This still isn't the most expensive vehicle I've ever ridden in. After all, a single subway train costs tens of millions of yuan to build. Qin Yushuan could not help bursting into laughter. The way she looked at Chen Fan had completely changed. The slightly shy boy from high school now possessed not only astonishing wealth but also a relaxed, confident, and genuinely likable personality that seemed capable of winning anyone over. Qin Yushuan quietly watched him for a long while. When she suddenly realized it was inappropriate to stare at a man like that, her pretty face flushed, and she hurriedly changed the subject. Where are you going after you drop me off? Back to the hotel to sleep, Chen Fan answered casually. When she learned that he was currently staying at a hotel, Qin Yushuan's eyes brightened slightly. She bit her lip and tentatively said, "It's still early. How about we get a late-night snack? I know a very good cafe restaurant." Chen Fan looked at her with a teasing half-smile. A late-night snack? Who was it at the reunion who kept insisting there was an urgent matter at home and absolutely couldn't stay any longer? her little scheme exposed on the spot. Qin Yuxuan's face, which had only just returned to normal, turned red all the way to her neck. Chen Fan had eaten only a little at the reunion, and going straight back to the hotel to sleep did sound boring. So he agreed. All right, show me the way. Before long, the two arrived at Miss Cafe restaurant beside the river. A night breeze drifted across the water, and the city lights reflected on the river's surface. Chen Fan expertly ordered several seafood dishes and grilled skewers, then asked Qin Yuxuan, "Would you like something to drink?" "Just a little." She held up her pinky to indicate a tiny amount. Chen Fan calmly told the server, "Then bring us a bottle of Ace of Spades champagne first." The server's eyes immediately lit up like bulbs. A bottle of Ace of Spades cost 8.888 yuan and was one of the most expensive drinks in the restaurant. The commission from selling just that bottle would keep him happy for a long time. While they waited for the food, Chen Fan took a closer look at Qin Yuxuan. Time seemed to have done nothing to diminish her beauty. She remained quiet, clear-eyed, and captivating, while her figure had become even more mature and alluring over the years. If the system gave her an overall rating, she would certainly score no lower than 95. The champagne and grilled skewers soon arrived. Chen Fan lifted his glass, gently swirled the liquid, and took a small sip. Every movement was simple and natural, yet carried a mesmerizing elegance and air of nobility. It was as though he were not drinking at an ordinary riverside restaurant, but a master pianist standing on the world's greatest stage, calmly performing a mysterious composition. Sitting across from him, Qin Yuxuan became completely absorbed in his elegant, gentlemanly presence. Tap. The soft sound of the empty glass returning to the table abruptly pulled Qin Yuxuan from her daze. She quickly looked away. To hide her embarrassment, she raised her glass and took a large drink, making her fair cheeks turn even redder. After tasting it carefully, Chen Fan said, "The flavor is full and fresh, with a pleasant fruit aroma. This bottle of Ace of Spades is authentic." Then he poured himself another glass and finished it in one swallow. "The fruit notes are fine, but it's still a little weak. Louis XIII would be more suitable." Chen Fan turned to the server. "Bring me a bottle of Louis XIII. The server hurried over with an awkward expression. "Sir, we don't have any in stock. We would need to obtain it from another establishment." Without blinking, Chen Fan offered the simplest solution. "I'll transfer 50,000 yuan to you now. After you buy the bottle, keep everything left over as an additional service fee. I have only one requirement. It must be genuine." A normal bottle of Louis XIII cost no more than around 30,000 yuan, which meant the remaining service fee was nearly equal to several months of the server's salary. The server looked ready to float with joy. He immediately patted his chest and guaranteed that the bottle he brought back would be 100% authentic. If an ordinary person spent money that way, others might assume he was deliberately showing off his wealth. But Chen Fan was different. His calm, natural bearing and clear, composed gaze turned even extravagant spending into a unique kind of art. Rather than feeling repelled, Qin Yuxuan admired and respected him more with every passing moment. Before long, the server ran back, panting, with an exquisitely packaged bottle of Louis XIII in his arms. He immediately opened it and poured the dark liquor into a glass. Chen Fan brought the glass to his nose, inhaled the aroma, then drank it in one swallow and nodded with satisfaction. "Very good. It's authentic." The server was so excited that he did not know what to do. He wanted to remain nearby and offer a few more flattering words, but when he saw Qin Yuxuan sitting across from Chen Fan like a fairy, he tactfully withdrew at once. Seeing Chen Fan drink it so easily, Qin Yuxuan grew curious and lifted her glass for a tiny sip. The liquor was far too strong, and she immediately began coughing violently. Chen Fan reminded her with concern, "This is too strong for you. Ace of Spades champagne suits women better." After catching her breath, Qin Yuxuan nodded repeatedly. After several drinks, accompanied by skewers and seafood, the two gradually relaxed. They smiled at each other and began freely discussing their lives and experiences over the years. When they finally left the restaurant, Qin Yuxuan had consumed only 3 small glasses, yet her eyes were already hazy with intoxication and her innocent face was as red as ripe, sweet fruit. Chen Fan, by contrast, remained as clear-headed and natural as ever. Before the gentleman god of wine skill, this amount of alcohol was no different to him from 2 ordinary bottles of mineral water. Standing beside the river, Qin Yuxuan felt the cool, gentle night breeze and could not help sighing. The night view is beautiful tonight. Chen Fan smiled mysteriously and pointed toward a low hill nearby. This isn't the best view. From the top of that hill, you can see the entire nighttime skyline of Jiangbei. The two followed a path up the hill. Looking down from above, the lights on both sides of the river sparkled like a galaxy scattered across the moral world, pushing the romantic atmosphere to its peak. Qin Yuxuan was marveling at the beauty before her when an unpleasant sound of water suddenly came from nearby, ruining the mood. Four local thugs with hair dyed in garish colors emerged from the darkness, adjusting their pants as they staggered closer. They were clearly drunk. The moment they saw Qin Yuxuan's perfect figure and beautiful face, all four men's eyes lit up. Well, look at this. A pretty girl on a deserted little hill. Come have some fun with us. Gorgeous. We guarantee you'll enjoy yourself. The four approached like starving wolves, practically drooling. Qin Yuxuan's face instantly turned pale. The area was remote and deserted, with no surveillance cameras nearby. If these drunk men truly did something lawless, the consequences would be unthinkable. Chen Fan stepped in front of Qin Yuxuan and firmly shielded her behind him. His eyes became as cold as ice. Get out of here now, before I actually lose my temper. But these fools had no idea that they were willingly provoking death itself. They assumed Chen Fan was merely playing the hero in front of a beautiful woman. The red-haired thug bared a mouthful of filthy yellow teeth and mocked him arrogantly. A pretty boy like you wants to save the beauty? Look at those skinny arms and legs. A gust of wind could knock you over. Don't worry, we'll take very good care of her for you tonight. Hearing such filthy words, Chen Fan did not argue. He calmly told Qin Yuxuan behind him, "Step back." Then he slowly rolled up his shirt sleeves. The next second, his entire body shot forward like a rocket. Bang! A heavy punch tore through the air and smashed into the red-haired thug's face. The man did not even have time to scream before flying backward like an empty sack. He crashed heavily to the ground several yards away and lost consciousness immediately. Without pausing, Chen Fan turned and drove another fist directly into the green-haired thug's chest. The crisp crack of breaking bone rang out. The green-haired thug stumbled backward, then collapsed to the ground, unable even to breathe properly. The remaining two men trembled with fear and turned to run. But how could Chen Fan give them the chance? He chased them like a leopard. In the blink of an eye, several more dull, vicious impacts sounded, and the two thugs fell one after another, unable to rise again. The entire fight was astonishingly fast. Every movement smooth, dangerous, and precise. Standing behind Chen Fan, Qin Yuxuan did not close her eyes. She even forgot to blink. What she had just witnessed looked like a classic scene from a blockbuster action film, filled with exhilarating raw power. This man, normally steady, gentle, polite, and as elegant as a gentleman when he drank, became astonishingly powerful and dangerous the moment he fought. At that moment, Qin Yuxuan fell completely into her love for Chen Fan. Unable to suppress her emotions any longer, she rushed forward and wrapped her arms tightly around him. The next morning, in the presidential suite at the Hilton, Qin Yuxuan lay curled beneath the blankets like a soft kitten. After a long time, her beautiful eyelashes fluttered, and she finally woke from sleep, remembering the sweet and passionate night they had shared. Qin Yuxuan's entire face turned crimson. She hurriedly wrapped her body in the particularly meaningful bedsheet, covering herself completely. Just then, Chen Fan entered the room carrying a bowl of hot soup. Qin Yuxuan tried to sit up, but a slight ache ran through her body, and her limbs felt sore and weak. She could not manage it at first. Chen Fan immediately walked to the bedside and gently held her down. "Yuxuan, just stay in bed. You were exhausted last night. Rest a little longer." At those words, Qin Yuxuan blushed from her cheeks all the way to the tips of her ears. Chen Fan prepared to feed her the soup himself, but she shyly waved him away. I haven't brushed my teeth yet. Go outside for a little while. I can get up by myself." Chen Fan smiled and did not force the issue. He turned and left the room. Just as he reached the hotel lobby, the time turned exactly noon. His phone suddenly vibrated violently, and the system's daily super red envelopes appeared on the screen again. Ding! Congratulations! You have received one 10x cashback card. Ding! Congratulations! You have received 29.999 yuan. After frantically opening the red envelopes, Chen Fan looked at the tens of thousands of yuan deposited through the system and the new 10x cashback card, then deliberately curled his lip in dissatisfaction. I spent so much money yesterday, and the red envelopes gave me cash. Why are today's daily red envelopes still giving me cash? If anyone else heard a wealthy man complain like that, they would probably cough up blood on the spot. He had received tens of thousands of yuan for free, along with a powerful 10x cashback card. Yet he still had the nerve to be picky. Chen Fan lazily looked at the system panel. His current level was still LV3, but the earnings it provided were already terrifying. 1 breath earned him 5 yuan. 1 second of sleep earned him 5 yuan. Every step forward also earned him 5 yuan. As long as he remained alive, this invisible money printing machine would continue operating at full speed automatically. Combined with the 1.38 million yuan in completely legal cash already sitting in his bank account, Chen Fan now possessed astonishing confidence. More than an hour later, Qin Yuxuan finally emerged after changing her clothes. The vulnerability and shyness of the previous night had faded. At that moment, she looked radiant and breathtaking, like a true goddess. Yet when she reached Chen Fan, her eyes suddenly grew wet. She threw herself into his arms, and tears streamed down her face. Chen Fan immediately panicked a little and asked, "What's wrong? Did someone hurt you?" Qin Yuxuan shook her head and said through her tears, "No, no one hurt me. I'm just too happy." She had quietly loved Chen Fan in her heart ever since high school. Now that boy had returned before her in such a powerful, perfect, and dazzling form and had truly accepted her. How could she possibly control her emotions so easily? Chen Fan wrapped an arm around her slender waist and promised firmly, "Yuxuan, don't cry. From now on, I'll take responsibility for you for the rest of your life." The two shared a gentle lunch together. Afterward, Qin Yuxuan suddenly mentioned that she had to travel to Shanghai. She had finally earned a place on an important project led by her academic advisor, and work was officially beginning the next day. She could not be late. Chen Fan understood her stubborn, independent sense of pride very well. It would be impossible to keep her like a bird trapped in a gilded cage. So he waved a hand. "Let's go. I'll take you there." To save money, Qin Yuxuan had already purchased an economy class ticket. Chen Fan said nothing more and simply paid to upgrade both of their seats to first class. Watching Qin Yuxuan sleep peacefully in the spacious, comfortable seat made him feel unusually calm as well. At 5:30 that afternoon, as the two walked out of Shanghai airport, they suddenly heard someone shouting, "Yuxuan! Yuxuan!" Qin Yuxuan turned around and was immediately delighted. Her roommate, Hong Moli, came jogging over and said excitedly, "Our flight times were unbelievably close. We arrived almost one after the other." After speaking, Hong Moli's inquisitive gaze immediately settled on Chen Fan. Chen Fan naturally extended his hand. "Hello, I'm Yuxuan's boyfriend." Hong Moli's mouth instantly formed a perfect circle. She looked Chen Fan up and down, then joked deliberately, "You really are handsome, but Yuxuan is publicly recognized as the most beautiful woman at our university. Rich young men line up to pursue her. Be honest, how exactly did you manage to win her over?" Chen Fan answered calmly, "Nothing special. I simply moved her with sincerity." Hong Moli's eyes darted, and she immediately seized the opportunity. "Words alone don't count. You have to show it through action. Since you're Yuxuan's boyfriend, you should treat her roommates to a good meal, right? You don't have a problem with that, do you?" Chen Fan nodded readily. "Of course not. You can choose the place." Before long, the group arrived at a fairly well-known restaurant. They had barely sat down when another of Qin Yuxuan's roommates arrived. When she learned that Chen Fan was actually Yuxuan's boyfriend, she exclaimed on the spot, "Oh my god, Yuxuan, you quietly started dating without telling anyone. All those men chasing you at school are probably going to cry tonight." After hearing that the two had been high school classmates, she adopted the protective attitude of Yuxuan's family and warned Chen Fan seriously, "So you two have known each other for all these years? Then you absolutely cannot let Yuxuan suffer in the future, or the rest of us won't let you off." Chen Fan patted his chest and promised, and the atmosphere quickly became relaxed and lively. They enjoyed the meal very much, but when it was time to pay, Chen Fan discovered that the total for all four people was only 1.500 yuan. Clearly, the girls had assumed he was an ordinary young man who had only recently started working. Worried that the bill might be too heavy for him, they had deliberately chosen an inexpensive restaurant and carefully avoided ordering anything costly. After dinner, one roommate received a call and immediately said happily, "The Cartier earrings I sent in for repair have arrived at the boutique in the International Finance Center across the street. It's still early. Let's go browse together." The exterior of the International Finance Center was extravagantly luxurious. Under the lights, the entire building seemed to glow with golden radiance. Chen Fan accompanied Qin Yuxuan and her roommates up the escalator to the Cartier boutique. A beautiful sales associate at the entrance welcomed them enthusiastically with a sweet smile. The roommate stepped forward, handed over her repair receipt, and prepared to collect her earrings. Jewelry truly was a temptation most women found difficult to resist. The moment Hong Moli entered the showroom, her eyes lit up. She did not dare touch the breathtakingly expensive high-end jewelry, so she could only admire the smaller pieces behind the display glass. "Look, this bracelet is gorgeous." The boutique associate was extremely perceptive and immediately began using her most persuasive compliments. "Ma'am, you have excellent taste. This special bracelet is a signature creation by one of France's finest designers. It is called the AI bracelet. The complete collection includes 7 different styles, and together they shine as brilliantly as a rainbow." Stars seemed to appear in the eyes of Hong Moli and the other roommate. Juan Yuero said excitedly. "There are 7 designs. The 4 of us in the dorm could each choose one and none of us would have the same style." Seeing that they were already interested, the associate immediately pointed to the most dazzling necklace in the center of the display and raised their anticipation further. However, compared with the Star of the Deep Sea, designed not long ago by Master Hunter Boko, these bracelets are still slightly less impressive. The Star of the Deep Sea is like a star hidden beneath the ocean, mysterious and beautiful. At an international jewelry exhibition, it captivated even many of the world's top brands. Qin Yuxuan followed the associate's gesture, and her beautiful eyes instantly lit up. Anyone could tell that she genuinely loved the necklace. Naturally, Chen Fan could see it too. He immediately said calmly, "Yuxuan, we've known each other for so long, but I've never formally given you a proper gift. I'll give you the Star of the Deep Sea." The boutique associate was delighted and immediately began praising them enthusiastically. "Sir, your taste is impeccable. This young lady is already so radiant. Paired with the Star of the Deep Sea, she would create the most perfect combination." Unexpectedly, Qin Yuxuan shook her head and refused. "Forget it. I'm busy with projects at the university every day, and it wouldn't be convenient to wear such a flashy necklace. Don't waste money." She had always been a straightforward, uncomplicated young woman. Although she knew Chen Fan could certainly afford it, she did not want him to mistake her for a woman who coveted expensive gifts. The boutique associate's heart nearly broke. Someone was voluntarily offering such a beautiful, precious necklace, and she could still reject it. Hong Moli could no longer resist asking quietly, "Mississippi, how much does the Star of the Deep Sea cost?" The associate straightened proudly and explained, "The centerpiece is a 2-carat natural blue diamond. This is the only piece in all of Shanghai. The price is actually not especially high, only 1.08 million yuan. "Oh my god. How much?" Hong Moli's mouth fell open in shock. She had expected the necklace to be expensive, but never imagined it would cost that much. Wearing that necklace would practically be the same as hanging a top-end luxury car around one's neck. Juan Yuero was stunned by the terrifying price as well. She drew back her neck and cautiously asked, "What about the AI bracelet from earlier? How much is one?" The associate smiled. "The AI bracelet is relatively affordable. Each one costs 58.888 yuan. At that number, Juan Yuero and Hong Moli looked at each other, and the excitement vanished from their faces. Nearly 60,000 yuan for a single bracelet. They were still university students. Perhaps they could afford one after beginning their careers. But for now, producing that much money at once remained a distant dream. No matter how much they liked the bracelets, they could only quietly withdraw their hands. At that moment, the earrings Juan Yuero had sent for repair were brought out. The associate packaged them neatly and handed them to her. The girls were already dizzy from the shock of seeing so much expensive jewelry. They did not remain any longer and soon left the boutique with Chen Fan to browse other parts of the mall. As they walked, a plan suddenly formed in Chen Fan's mind. He used the restroom as an excuse and told Qin Yuxuan and the others to go ahead. Then he immediately turned around and returned to the Cartier boutique. When the associate saw this potential super client return, she hurried over at a run. "Sir, is there anything else you need?" With his hands in his pockets, Chen Fan spoke in the ordinary tone of someone buying groceries. "I'll take the Star of the Deep Sea and 4 AI bracelets. A necklace worth 1.08 million yuan, plus 4 bracelets." The total order exceeded 1.3 million yuan. The associate's heart seemed to pound 200 times a minute. She was so excited that she began to stammer. "Why yes. Sir, I'll package them for you immediately. Chen Fan waved impatiently. There's no need for all that trouble. Skip the elaborate packaging and hand them directly to me. Of course. The associate's fingers flew across the calculator so quickly that they seemed ready to strike sparks. Sir, the total is 1.315.552 yuan. Under my personal authority, I can apply a 1% discount for you. No need. Chen Fan interrupted her and handed over his bank card. Don't apply the discount. Treat that 1% as your tip. Serving an ultra-wealthy client truly was an entirely different experience. The boutique associate felt as though she had floated into the clouds. 1% amounted to more than 13,000 yuan, nearly equivalent to several months of her salary. She struggled to steady her wildly pounding heart, accepted the bank card with both hands, and thanked Chen Fan again and again. At that moment, the system notification sounded in Chen Fan's mind once more. Ding! A purchase of 1.315.552 yuan has been detected. Use the 10x cashback card? Use it, Chen Fan said silently. Ding! 10x cashback card used successfully. System upgrade successful. Current level. LV4. LV4 privilege. The host will receive 10 yuan for every breath. The day's accumulated earnings will be deposited automatically into the host's bank account at midnight. Requirement for the next level. Accumulate 10 million yuan in spending. Far from feeling pressured by the number, Chen Fan found it almost funny. In the past, he had tolerated his boss's cold attitude and worked overtime for an extra 1,000 yuan in wages. Now the system was seriously reminding him that he needed to find a way to spend 10 million yuan. Sometimes the world changed in ways even more absurd than a novel. What surprised him even more was that the purchase had triggered another 131 red envelopes. Standing in Cartier's VIP room, Chen Fan tapped rapidly across his screen. Ding! Congratulations! You have received 66.666 yuan. Ding! Congratulations! You have received God-tier business insight. Ding! Congratulations! You have received a top-floor duplex at Shanghai Cloud Summit International Apartments. Ding! Congratulations! You have received a 51% stake in Shanghai Technology Group. Chen Fan's tapping stopped abruptly. Shanghai Technology Group? Although he had never attended college, he had often seen the name in financial news. Shanghai Technology was a renowned high-tech investment and industrial incubation group based in Shanghai, with a market value approaching 10 billion yuan. Its holdings included artificial intelligence, medical device, and new energy laboratories, and it had long funded major research projects at several universities. A 51% stake meant he had become the true controlling shareholder of the group. The next second, an enormous torrent of knowledge flooded his mind. Corporate management, financial analysis, mergers and restructuring, market strategy, technology valuation. The complex reports that once gave Chen Fan a headache now looked as simple as elementary school arithmetic. By the time the boutique associate returned carrying the jewelry, Chen Fan had regained his composure. Sir, everything is ready for you. Thank you. Chen Fan accepted the jewelry and left. Outside the boutique, Qin Yuxuan and her 3 roommates were waiting beside an ice cream shop. When Hong Moli saw him return, she immediately teased him with a smile. Handsome Chen, that was quite a long bathroom trip. We almost thought you'd gotten lost in the mall. Chen Fan did not explain. He simply took 4 small boxes from the bag. You seemed to like these earlier, so I picked them up. What are they? Hong Moli accepted a box in confusion. The instant she opened it, she froze as though someone had pressed pause. An AI bracelet? Wan Yuero leaned over, looked inside, and cried out. It's the same style from earlier. You really bought 4 of them? The other roommate was completely stunned as well. 4 bracelets cost nearly 240.000 yuan. They had only made a few jokes, yet Chen Fan had actually purchased all of them. Hong Moli hurriedly shoved the box back. No, this is far too expensive. We just met you today. How could we accept such a valuable gift? Exactly. Wan Yuero quickly shook her head as well. We treated you to a meal that cost a little over 1,000 yuan. And then you turn around and give us bracelets worth tens of thousands. What kind of exchange is that? Chen Fan smiled. You saved money for me earlier because you genuinely care about Yuxuan as a friend. I'm giving you these because I'm grateful that you've looked after her over the years. The money is mine, and the goodwill is for you. There's no need to compare the prices. The girls still hesitated. Qin Yuxuan looked into Chen Fan's calm eyes and said softly, Accept them. Once he decides something, no one can talk him out of it. Holding the box, Hong Moli suddenly became serious. Chen Fan, let me make one thing clear. I can accept the gift, but if you ever bully Yushuan, I'll sell this bracelet and hire the most expensive lawyer I can find to sue you. No problem. Chen Fan agreed readily, then took out the final box. The moment Qin Yushuan saw the familiar packaging, her expression changed. You didn't buy that necklace too, did you? Chen Fan opened the box. Under the lights, the blue diamond shimmered with a cool, profound glow, like a real star sleeping at the bottom of the ocean. The girls around them held their breath at the same time. Qin Yushuan did not reach for it. Instead, she frowned. I already told you I don't need something this expensive. I know. Chen Fan placed the necklace in her palm. His tone held neither boasting nor pressure. You dislike its price, but you like the necklace itself. To me, 1.08 million yuan won't affect my life. But I remembered the way you looked at it earlier. Qin Yushuan stared at him in a daze. Chen Fan continued. It isn't meant to prove that I'm rich, and I'm not trying to turn you into a woman who depends on me. It's simply the first gift I'm giving you as your boyfriend. You can lock it in a drawer and wear it only when you truly want to. Qin Yushuan's eyes slowly reddened. In the end, she stopped refusing and merely said in a low voice, You're not allowed to surprise me like this again. All right, and you're not allowed to think money gives you the right to decide everything for me. I'll listen to you. One last condition. She bit her lip, her voice becoming even softer. You have to put it on me yourself. Hong Moli immediately covered her eyes. This is too much. The three of us are still standing right here. Smiling, Chen Fan stepped behind Qin Yushuan and fastened the necklace around her neck. The blue diamond rested between her fair collarbones as though it had been made for her from the beginning. At that moment, even customers passing through the store could not help looking back. As the group laughed and talked, a young man in a silver-gray suit approached with two assistants. When he saw the necklace around Qin Yushuan's neck, his eyes first filled with admiration. Then his gaze shifted to Chen Fan, and his expression rapidly cooled. Yushuan, so you've already arrived in Shanghai. Qin Yushuan's smile faded slightly. Lu Mingho, why are you here? My family owns shares in this mall. It's perfectly normal for me to inspect the property. Lu Mingho deliberately ignored Chen Fan and reached toward the necklace around Qin Yushuan's neck. I had the Star of the Deep Sea reserved yesterday and was preparing to give it to you. I can't believe the staff dared sell it to someone else. Chen Fan raised a hand and blocked his wrist. You can talk, but don't casually touch my girlfriend. Girlfriend? Lu Mingho narrowed his eyes, as though looking seriously at Chen Fan for the first time. Who are you? Chen Fan. What do you do? I don't currently have a fixed occupation. The instant Lu Mingho heard that answer, a contemptuous curve appeared at the corner of his mouth. He had pursued Qin Yushuan for a long time and knew that she was aloof and had never accepted any rich young heir. Yet after one trip to Jiangbei, she had returned with a man who did not even have a job. Yushuan, when did your standards become so poor? Qin Yushuan's face darkened. My affairs have nothing to do with you. Lu Mingho acted as though he had not heard her and continued staring at Chen Fan. That necklace costs more than 1 million yuan. You didn't buy it with a credit card, did you? Is it worth mortgaging the rest of your life just to pretend to be rich in front of a woman? Hong Moli was about to argue when Chen Fan laughed. You said your family owns shares in this mall? That's right. How much? The question caught Lu Mingho off guard, but he quickly answered arrogantly. 3.2%. It may not sound like much, but the annual dividends are more than an ordinary person could earn in an entire lifetime. Chen Fan nodded. It really isn't much. What did you say? I said 3.2% is nothing worth bragging about. Lu Mingho laughed in fury. That's a bold statement. How many shares do you own? None. Chen Fan answered calmly. Lu Mingho was about to mock him when the phone in Chen Fan's pocket suddenly rang. Only 4 Chinese characters appear on the caller ID, Shanghai Technology. Chen Fan answered the call. An extremely respectful middle-aged voice came from the other end. Chairman Chen. Hello. I'm Zhou Haishan, Executive President of Shanghai Technology Group. Our legal department has confirmed that you acquired a 51% controlling stake, and the board members are waiting at headquarters. Would you be available to meet this evening? Chen Fan glanced at Lu Mingho and deliberately asked, Does Shanghai Technology own shares in the International Finance Center? Zhou Haishan immediately replied, Yes. The group holds 26.8% and is the second largest shareholder. Lu Commercial Holdings owns 3.2% and has only ordinary financial investor rights. The mall corridor was quiet, and everyone clearly heard the voice over the phone. Lu Mingho's expression froze instantly. Chen Fan said calmly, "Understood. I'll be at group headquarters in 1 hour." After ending the call, he looked at Lu Mingho. "Now do you understand why I consider 3.2% insignificant?" Lu Mingho's lips moved several times, but he could not form a complete sentence. Of course he understood what it meant to stand before Shanghai Technology's new controlling shareholder. Several of the Lu family's most important projects depended on Shanghai Technology's financing channels. If he truly offended the other party, his father would never forgive him. "Mr. Chen, there may have been a misunderstanding just now." Lu Mingho forced out a smile. Chen Fan did not respond. He simply took Qin Yuxuan's hand. "Let's go." The moment the group left, the smile vanished completely from Lu Mingho's face. He stared at Chen Fan's back, his eyes filled with jealousy and resentment. One assistant quietly reminded him, "Young Master Lu, the chairman specifically instructed us to maintain a good relationship with Shanghai Technology recently." "Shut up." Lu Mingho spun around and slapped the assistant across the face. "Why should I bow my head to some nouveau riche nobody who appeared out of nowhere?" After several seconds of silence, he took out his phone and dialed a number. "Professor Su, Qin Yuxuan is back in Shanghai. You can start handling the authorship issue for the research results we discussed." The person on the other end hesitated. "Young Master Lu, this is very risky. Qin Yuxuan has the original experimental records. If this becomes a major scandal, she won't have them for much longer." Lu Mingho sneered. "Drive her out of the project team. Once she loses the support of the university and her advisor, a woman with no background will have no choice but to come begging me." 1 hour later, at Shanghai Technology Group headquarters, the moment Chen Fan stepped out of the elevator, dozens of executives stood in orderly rows on both sides. Zhou Haishan, standing at the front, hurried forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome, Chairman Chen." Although Qin Yuxuan and her roommates had prepared themselves, the scene still left them speechless with shock. Chen Fan, however, remained perfectly calm. His God-tier business insight had already allowed him to review all of the group's public information from the past 5 years. As he walked toward the conference room, every question he casually asked struck directly at one of the group's most critical risks. Why did the new energy subsidiary inflate orders for 3 consecutive quarters without triggering an audit? Why did the legal department allow further investment in the medical device project when ownership of the patents remains disputed? Last year, Lu Commercial Holdings took a 300 million yuan low-interest loan through an affiliated company. The collateral was valued 40% above market price. Who signed off on it? With every question, the conference room grew quieter. More and more cold sweat formed on Zhou Haishan's forehead. He had originally feared that this suddenly appearing young shareholder was merely lucky and wealthy, with no understanding of business. Yet without even consulting the documents, Chen Fan had identified every deeply hidden problem. No ordinary investor could do that. Chen Fan tapped the table. "I'll have an independent audit team reinvestigate past matters. I won't mistreat anyone who works seriously. Anyone who used the company to funnel benefits elsewhere would be wise to come forward now." One vice president turned deathly pale and stood up on the spot. "Chairman Chen, I'm willing to cooperate with the investigation." A second person rose immediately after him. In less than 10 minutes, cracks began appearing throughout a management team that had once seemed united. Zhou Haishan was secretly alarmed. This young man acted with absolute decisiveness. He did not even need to raise his voice to place the entire conference room under immense pressure. After handling the group's affairs, Chen Fan turned to the list of university partnership projects. When Qin Yuxuan saw one of the entries, her expression immediately became serious. "This is the intelligent neural monitoring chip project led by my advisor." Chen Fan looked down at it. The project had a budget of 80 million yuan, of which Shanghai Technology had already invested 20 million. Its technical objective was to capture neural signals in real time under ultra-low power conditions, with future applications in epilepsy warnings, post-operative monitoring, and rehabilitation equipment. His God-tier business insight rapidly produced an assessment. The technology had extremely high potential, with a current valuation of at least 1 billion yuan. Yet there were obvious problems in the project management section. The project's executive deputy director, Su Jiqiang, also served as a technical consultant to Lu Medical. Over the past 6 months, He had subcontracted several core experiments to companies under the Lu Group at prices far above market rates. Chen Fan looked up at Qin Yuxuan. Is Su Jiqiang part of your project team? He's the deputy director. Qin Yuxuan frowned. He has always had a good relationship with my advisor, but I don't like him. He often demands that we hand the raw data to Lu Medical first, supposedly to make commercialization easier. Did you give it to him? No. My advisor refused as well. Chen Fan opened an internal email that had just arrived. The email showed that Su Jiqiang had requested that Shanghai Technology replace a core researcher. His stated reason was that Qin Yuxuan had insufficient academic ability, prolonged absences, and suspected copying of another party's experimental results. After reading it, Hong Moli slammed the table in anger. That's a lie. Yuxuan often sleeps in the laboratory for 2 or 3 days at a time for this project. She went back to Jiangbei for one class reunion, and now they're calling that a prolonged absence? Qin Yuxuan's face grew slightly pale, but she did not panic. My experimental data has complete timestamps, and every stage was recorded. I can prove it. Chen Fan looked at her. What do you plan to do? Return to the university and attend tomorrow's project review. They've clearly prepared to target you. That's exactly why I can't hide. Qin Yuxuan raised her head, her eyes clear and determined. Chen Fan, I know you could solve this for me easily, but this is my research and my reputation. I want to prove my innocence myself first. Chen Fan remained silent for a moment, then smiled. All right, you prove yourself, and I'll make sure the rules are fair. The next morning, at the Joint Laboratory Center of Shanghai Medical University, the moment Qin Yuxuan entered the conference room, Su Jiqiang said coldly, "So you finally remembered to come back? You disappeared during the most critical phase of the project and delayed the experiments. Do you have any sense of responsibility?" Qin Yuxuan placed her laptop on the table. I took 1 day of approved leave. My advisor signed the paperwork. The project was not delayed. The automated testing was completed early yesterday morning. Who knows whether you copied the data in advance? Lu Mingho sat beside the review panel, his tone full of malice. Professor Su discovered that parts of the algorithm you submitted are highly similar to an internal plan at Lu Medical. Yuxuan, I'm willing to believe you made a momentary mistake. If you voluntarily withdraw from the project, I can persuade everyone not to pursue the matter. Several people in the conference room lowered their heads. They knew Qin Yuxuan was likely being framed, but no one wanted to offend the Lu family. Qin Yuxuan did not look at Lu Mingho. She simply connected an encrypted hard drive to the projector. These are all experimental logs from the past 6 months, including every code submission, device parameter, failed result, and revision record. Every file was automatically signed by the university server and cannot be forged afterward. Su Jiqiang's expression shifted slightly. Qin Yuxuan continued. The so-called internal plan at Lu Medical was created last Wednesday. My core algorithm was first submitted 4 months ago. The timestamps make it very clear who copied whom. On the screen, the timelines of the 2 sets of files formed a stark contrast. The review experts began whispering among themselves. Lu Mingho abruptly turned towards Su Jiqiang. Su Jiqiang gritted his teeth. Timestamps can also be altered. Besides, you don't control the university server's administrative permissions. How can you prove no one helped you fabricate them? She doesn't need to prove that. The conference room door suddenly opened. Chen Fan entered with Zhou Haishan, the group's legal team, and independent auditors. Su Jiqiang frowned. This is an internal academic review. Outsiders are not allowed to attend. Zhou Haishan placed a document directly on the table. Shanghai Technology is the project's largest industrial investor. Under the cooperation agreement, when an intellectual property dispute arises, we have the right to assign audit and legal personnel to supervise the entire process. Lu Mingho forced himself to say, Shanghai Technology still cannot interfere with the university's academic decisions. Of course we can't. Chen Fan pulled out a chair and sat down. That's why we're discussing only evidence. The lead independent auditor opened another computer. Last night, we conducted a complete trace of data transmissions between Lu Medical and the project team. The results show that Professor Su Jiqiang used a personal account on 17 separate occasions to send files from the university server to Lu Medical's technical director. Those files included the core algorithm Qin Yuxuan submitted 4 months ago. Last Wednesday, Lu Medical renamed the algorithm and registered it as an internal corporate achievement. Yesterday, Professor Su reported the original author, Qin Yuxuan, for suspected copying on the grounds of excessive similarity. The conference room became completely silent. Every trace of color vanished from Su Jiqiang's face. Impossible. There's no way you could have obtained those records. Chen Fan looked at him. You're not denying it. You're only surprised that we found the records. Su Jiqiang abruptly realized that he had misspoken and collapsed into his chair. Lu Mingho stood up and shouted harshly. You fabricated all of this. Lu Medical would never do such a thing. Zhou Haishan produced another document. These are the collateral materials Lu Commercial Holdings submitted when applying for a 300 million yuan loan from Shanghai Technology through an affiliated company. The independent audit has confirmed that 2 core assets were pledged more than once and that 3 valuation reports were likely forged. Shanghai Technology will immediately terminate the loan and submit the evidence to the regulatory authorities. Lu Mingho's expression changed dramatically. You wouldn't dare. Chen Fan looked up at him. Why wouldn't I? My father won't let you get away with this. You should first ask yourself whether he'll let you get away with it. The moment he finished speaking, Lu Mingho's phone began ringing frantically. He answered, and his father's furious roar instantly filled the conference room. You worthless bastard. Who told you to interfere with a project funded by Shanghai Technology? The banks have frozen our credit lines, and every partner is demanding early settlement. Apologize to Chairman Chen immediately. Clutching the phone, Lu Mingho's face shifted between pale and flushed. Dozens of eyes were fixed on him. Never in his life had he suffered such humiliation. But the Lu family's cash flow had been strangled, and he had no choice. Lu Mingho walked to Chen Fan and lowered his head. Mr. Chen. I'm sorry. Chen Fan said nothing. Lu Mingho turned toward Qin Yushuan, forcing the words through clenched teeth. Miss Qin. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. Qin Yushuan answered calmly. You didn't misunderstand. You deliberately stole my research and then used it to destroy my reputation. An apology cannot replace accountability. She looked at the university administrators. I request that the university launch a formal investigation and submit all evidence to the judicial authorities. The university official immediately nodded. Of course, we will handle this matter with the utmost seriousness. Su Jiqiang finally broke down and rushed forward, trying to seize the computer. Chen Fan did not even stand. He simply reached out with one hand and locked his fingers around Su Jiqiang's wrist. Su Jiqiang struggled desperately, but his hand felt trapped in a steel vise. The pain left his forehead covered in cold sweat. Let go of me. When you stole someone else's work, why didn't you think about how much pain you would cause? Chen Fan gave him a light shove, and Su Jiqiang staggered backward and fell onto the floor. Security guards quickly restrained him. After the review ended, Qin Yushuan stood in the hallway and let out a long breath. Chen Fan walked to her side. How do you feel? Exhausted, but incredibly satisfied. She turned and looked at Chen Fan seriously. Thank you for not simply driving everyone out on my behalf. My girlfriend is capable of proving herself. Of course I couldn't steal her spotlight. Qin Yushuan could not help smiling. But you did a good job making sure the rules were fair. Only a good job? Then I'll give you a reward. She rose onto her toes and gently kissed Chen Fan on the cheek. Not far away, Hong Moli immediately covered her mouth and shrieked. This is a university. Could you two please behave appropriately? Qin Yushuan blushed, grabbed Chen Fan, and hurried away. After the project team was reorganized, Shanghai Technology officially added another 80 million yuan in funding, and Qin Yushuan was appointed head of the core algorithm team. Chen Fan did not simply give her the money. Instead, he required the project to establish an open budget, third-party auditing, and a formal system for distributing research outcomes. Zhou Haishan admired him more and more. A true nouveau riche knew only how to throw money around. Chen Fan knew exactly where money should be invested and how to make every yuan create value. After resolving matters in Shanghai, Chen Fan prepared to return to Jiangbei. Qin Yushuan could not leave the project for the time being, so she could only see him off at the airport. Before he boarded, she pushed a bank card into his hand. What's this? I can't repay you for the necklace and bracelets right now, Qin Yushuan said seriously. There's 130.000 yuan on the card. Everything I've saved over the years. Take it for now, and I'll slowly repay the rest. Chen Fan did not know whether to laugh or cry. Are you really planning to keep accounts this carefully with your boyfriend? I can accept your gifts, and I'm willing to give you my feelings. But I don't want to treat everything you do for me as something I'm automatically entitled to. Chen Fan looked at her for several seconds, then put the bank card in his pocket. Qin Yuxuan had only just breathed a sigh of relief when he opened his phone and designated the card as their joint travel fund. From now on, this money can be used for only one thing. What? Once your project reaches a pause, we'll travel together. You pay, and I'll be responsible for tagging along. Qin Yuxuan's eyes curved with a smile. That's more like it. After returning to Jiangbei, Chen Fan did not go to the hotel first. He drove directly to his parents' small clothing shop. A crowd had gathered outside the store. His mother, Lu Mei, stood below the steps with an ugly expression. His father, Chen Guolian, shielded her while arguing with a middle-aged man wearing a thick gold chain. There are still 3 months left on the lease. If you suddenly force us to move now, you should at least compensate us according to the contract. The gold-chained man waved impatiently. What contract? This entire street is about to recruit new tenants. Every old shop has to leave. A little store like yours that barely makes any money in a year will only lower the standard of the commercial district. Lu Mei suppressed her anger. We've operated here for more than 10 years and have never missed a rent payment. If you're going to clear us out, you should at least give us time to handle the inventory. Giving you 3 days is already generous. Behind the man, a young woman folded her arms and sneered. Chen Fan recognized her as Zhao Qian, a distant niece on his mother's side. When Zhao Qian's family had struggled during her childhood, Lu Mei often gave her clothes and lent them money. After she married the leasing manager of the commercial street, however, she stopped treating these poor relatives with any respect. Zhao Qian deliberately raised her voice. Auntie, people need to face reality. From now on, this street will be filled with international brands. Don't you feel embarrassed placing your little shop that sells clothes for a few dozen yuan among them? Lu Mei's eyes reddened with anger. Zhao Qian, when you got married, I was the one who lent you money for your wedding dress. It was only a few thousand yuan. Are you planning to hold it over me for the rest of my life? Zhao Qian curled her lip. Besides, any one of my handbags now costs more than a few thousand. If you're truly struggling, I can give you 10,000 yuan in moving expenses. Stop making an ugly scene here. Who said we were struggling? Chen Fan's voice came from behind the crowd. When Lu Mei turned and saw her son, she was delighted at first, then immediately became worried. Xiao Fan, why are you back? We can handle this. Don't act impulsively. Zhao Qian looked Chen Fan up and down. He wore a tailored suit, a limited edition watch on his wrist, and carried himself entirely differently from before. But she quickly decided that everything had to be counterfeit. Chen Fan, I heard you started working right after high school and never amounted to much. What? You put on a knockoff suit and came back to stand up for your parents? Chen Fan ignored her and looked only at the man with the gold chain. Are you in charge here? I'm Ma Dongcheng, the leasing manager. Who owns this street? Ma Dongcheng looked as though he had heard a joke. Yunjin Commercial Street belongs to Haichuan Properties. The entire project is worth more than 2 billion yuan. What? Are you planning to complain about me to the owner? Chen Fan nodded and took out his phone. On the flight back to Jiangbei, he had just purchased a portfolio of high-quality assets through Shanghai Technology's investment platform in order to meet the requirement for upgrading to LV5. One of those assets was Yunjin Commercial Street, which had been poorly managed and was being prepared for a complete sale. The total price was 1.2 billion yuan. Of course, the system did not require him to have 1.2 billion yuan in cash immediately. Shanghai Technology completed the acquisition using the group's credit. Chen Fan personally paid only a 10 million yuan initial equity contribution, while the remaining funds would be covered by future rental income and group financing. That 10 million yuan expenditure was exactly enough to upgrade the system again. System level. LV5. LV5 privilege. The host will receive 100 yuan for every heartbeat. New ability. Before the host decides to invest in any legal project, the system will provide a risk warning. Upgrade reward. God-tier fashion design and supply chain management. At that moment, he called the chairman of Haichuan Properties. Chairman Zhang, has the transfer of Yunjin Commercial Street been completed? The man on the other end immediately answered respectfully. Chairman Chen, it has been completed. All property rights and operational control rights have been transferred to Yunjin Commercial Company under Shanghai. We are waiting for you to appoint a new management team. Chen Fan switched the call to speakerphone. There's a leasing manager here named Ma Dongcheng and a leasing supervisor named Zhao Qian. They're forcibly evicting tenants who are fully complying with their leases. Chairman Zhang's voice immediately became tense. Chairman Chen, I'll handle it at once. The arrogance on Ma Dongqing's face slowly disappeared. What did he call you? Chairman Zhang was already roaring over the phone. Ma Dongqing, Yunjin Commercial Street has just been acquired. And Mr. Chen is the new owner. Stop every illegal eviction immediately. Surrender your employee ID. And submit to an audit. The surrounding crowd erupted. Zhao Qian's entire face turned deathly pale. The new owner? Impossible. Chen Fan looked at her. Didn't you say this street would only be worthy of international brands from now on? Zhao Qian's lips trembled. Cousin, I was only joking earlier. We're family. You can't do this over a few words. You're not being fired over a few words. Chen Fan's tone remained calm. You used your leasing authority to take back low-rent storefronts and then let affiliated companies sublease them at high prices. Over the past year, you have misappropriated more than 3 million yuan in tenant deposits. The group audit will investigate everything. If the offenses are serious, the matter will be turned over to the police. Ma Dongqing's legs went weak, and he nearly dropped to his knees. Mr. Chen, I'll return the money. Please give me one chance. The people who deserve a chance are the tenants you forced out. Chen Fan turned toward his parents. Dad, Mom, this store doesn't need to move. Lu Mei still had not recovered from the shock. Xiao Fan, did you truly buy the entire commercial street? Technically, the company bought it. What company do you have? I've been investing recently. I've had good luck. Chen Guoliang stared at his son for a long time. He did not press him about the exact source of the money. Instead, he asked in a deep voice, is it legal? Completely legal. Did you hurt anyone to get it? No. Chen Guoliang nodded. Then that's enough. It doesn't matter whether you have a lot of money or a little. Don't ever lose your conscience. Warmth filled Chen Fan's heart. His father had not become excited over a commercial street worth 1.2 billion yuan. Nor had he lost his sense of proportion because his son had suddenly become wealthy. What mattered most to him was still whether his son had taken the wrong path. Dad, I'll remember that. That evening, the family of 3 returned to the old home where they had lived for more than 20 years. Lu Mei cooked an entire table of dishes and kept placing food into Chen Fan's bowl. No matter how luxurious a hotel is, the food can't compare with a home-cooked meal. Now that you have money, you have even less excuse to eat carelessly outside every day. I know, Mom. And when are you bringing home that girl named Yushuan? Chen Fan nearly choked on his soup. How did you know? Lu Mei took out her phone. On the night of the class reunion, someone had secretly recorded Chen Fan and Qin Yushuan getting into the Lamborghini together. The video had long since spread through social media circles across Jiangbei. She's beautiful, and her eyes look honest and clear. Lu Mei said seriously, don't think that having some money gives you the right to behave like those irresponsible men. If you've chosen her, then treat her well. Chen Fan smiled and nodded. I've already chosen her. Over the next month, Chen Fan began redesigning the future of Yunjin Commercial Street. He did not drive out the long-time merchants. Instead, he lowered several unreasonable rents and provided funds to help distinctive small businesses renovate and upgrade. Nor did he directly transform his parents' clothing shop into a luxury brand. Using the fashion design and supply chain abilities awarded by the system, Chen Fan designed the first collection of high-quality basics for ordinary women on his mother's behalf. The cuts were comfortable, the fabrics durable, and the prices remained affordable. Shortly after the products launched, a video filmed spontaneously by a customer went viral online. Orders rapidly grew from a few dozen pieces a day to tens of thousands. Lu Mei stared at the sales numbers in the system dashboard and became too nervous to sleep. Xiaofan, what if so many people order that we can't make enough? Then we build a factory and hire workers. How much would that cost? We'll invest 500 million yuan to start. The cup in Lu Mei's hand nearly fell to the floor. 500 million? Chen Guoliang's eyes widened as well. Are you opening a clothing factory or building airplanes? Chen Fan laughed. We're not making clothes for only one little shop. I'm going to turn what you've spent more than 10 years protecting into a real brand. The brand was ultimately named Fan Mei. Lu Mei thought the name was too showy, but Chen Fan insisted. Dad is responsible for quality. Mom gives opinions on the designs, and I provide the money. Of course the name should include our whole family. The factory site was chosen in an old industrial park on the outskirts of Jiangbei that had been shut down for years. More than 1,000 textile workers had once worked there. After the original company went bankrupt, a large number of them lost their jobs. After acquiring the park, Chen Fan gave priority to rehiring the former employees and increased wages by 30%. On the day production began, many gray-haired workers stood at the factory gate with red eyes. An elderly tailor took Chen Guoliang's hand. "Old Chen, we thought we would never be able to come back here in this lifetime." Chen Guoliang looked at his son with a complicated expression. Only at that moment did he truly understand that wealth could do more than buy cars and houses. It could restore food, work, and dignity to many families. Fanmei Apparel became profitable in its first quarter. Shanghai Technology's audit also uncovered the full extent of the problems at Lu Commercial Holdings. The Lu family had long used related party transactions to siphon funds, and the amount involved in its financial fraud exceeded 1 billion yuan. Regulators formally opened a case, and the banks withdrew all lending. Lu Mingho's father confined him at home and barred him from all company affairs. But instead of reflecting on his actions, Lu Mingho blamed every failure on Chen Fan and Qin Yushuan. Late one night, Qin Yushuan finished an experiment and walked alone toward the parking lot. An unlicensed van suddenly blocked her path. 3 masked men rushed out, and one of them immediately grabbed for her laptop bag. Qin Yushuan clung tightly to the bag and shouted for help. The man raised a hand to strike her. Before the blow could land, a hand reached in from the side and seized his wrist. "I warned you not to touch her." The familiar voice made Qin Yushuan jerk her head up. Chen Fan stood in front of her, his eyes terrifyingly cold. He had planned to surprise Qin Yushuan by coming to Shanghai early from Jiangbei. He never expected to witness this scene the moment he reached the university. The masked man struggled violently and drew a short knife from his waist with his other hand. Chen Fan twisted aside and drove his knee heavily into the man's abdomen. The attacker folded over like a shrimp, and the knife fell to the ground. The other 2 charged at the same time. Chen Fan grabbed one by the collar and slammed him directly into the van door. The other had barely raised an iron club when Chen Fan struck his wrist with perfect accuracy, sending the weapon flying. In less than 20 seconds, all 3 men were on the ground. Qin Yushuan immediately called the police. When officers arrived, they found restraint straps, forced sedatives, and a portable hard drive duplicator inside the van. This was clearly not an ordinary robbery. Their targets were Qin Yushuan and the project data stored on her computer. During questioning, one attacker quickly confessed that the employer had paid 500,000 yuan through an underground intermediary. They had been ordered to take the computer and create the false appearance that Qin Yushuan had voluntarily leaked the data and then disappeared. The money was ultimately traced to Lu Mingho's personal account. When police took Lu Mingho away, he was still screaming wildly, "I was only taking back what belonged to the Lu family. That project should have been mine from the beginning." Standing outside the police station, Qin Yushuan looked slightly pale. Chen Fan removed his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Were you scared?" "I was terrified just now," she answered honestly. "I'm not anymore. I'm assigning bodyguards to you from now on." This time, Qin Yushuan did not immediately refuse as she had in the past. "Fine, but they can't interfere with my work, and I refuse to have a dozen people surrounding me every day." 2. 1. 2. Qin Yushuan glared at him. Chen Fan refused to yield. "You're listening to me on this. Then I have a condition too. Tell me, when you come to Shanghai in the future, you're not allowed to appear secretly. Tell me in advance so I can meet you." Chen Fan smiled. "Deal." Lu Mingho was soon formally arrested on suspicion of instigating kidnapping, stealing trade secrets, and intentional assault. In an attempt to protect himself, the chairman of Lu Commercial Holdings shifted much of the blame onto his son, but he still could not escape investigations into financial fraud and fraudulent loan applications. 3 months later, Lu Commercial Holdings entered bankruptcy restructuring. Through a lawful public auction, Shanghai Technology acquired its high-quality medical assets and reorganized the former Lu Medical as Yufan Medical Technology. When Qin Yushuan learned the name, she blushed for an entire day. "Why did you put my name first?" "Because the technology is yours." "Then why does your name have to be included too?" "Because the money is mine." His completely matter-of-fact expression made Qin Yushuan laugh. "You're becoming more and more like a real profiteer." "Thank you for the compliment." After the intelligent neural monitoring chip completed preclinical validation, it was publicly unveiled at the National Medical Technology Conference. On the day of the presentation, Qin Yushuan wore a simple white suit and stood before thousands of experts and members of the media. She wore no extravagant jewelry, only the star of the deep sea. The blue diamond shimmered under the lights without stealing any of her own radiance. She clearly explained the project's principles, experimental process, and future applications. When reporters asked about the earlier academic controversy, Qin Yuxuan did not avoid the subject. Research should not belong to a powerful individual, nor should authorship change under pressure from capital. Real technology can withstand replication, and legitimate authorship can withstand the record of time. I was very fortunate. At my most difficult moment, someone did not step onto the stage in my place. He protected the stage so that I could finish speaking for myself. Applause erupted throughout the hall. The camera turned toward Qin Fan in the front row. A reporter immediately followed up. Dr. Qin, is the person you mentioned Mr. Qin Fan, chairman of Shanghai Technology? Qin Yuxuan looked at him with a gentle smile in her eyes. Yes. There are rumors that the two of you are dating. Are they true? The room immediately became lively. Qin Yuxuan did not evade the question. They're true. Another reporter asked. How much help has Mr. Qin provided to your career? Qin Yuxuan thought for a moment. He provided funding, fair rules, and a sense of security. But I performed the experiments myself. And I wrote the paper myself. Qin Fan smiled and applauded from below the stage. This was exactly the Qin Yuxuan he loved. She accepted love without ever surrendering her independence. After the project's launch, Yufan Medical's valuation quickly exceeded 30 billion yuan. Qin Fan's system also upgraded several times in succession. Current level, LV6. Receive 500 yuan for every heartbeat. Current level, LV7. Receive 1 million yuan in base earnings every minute. Current level, LV8. All legal businesses owned by the host will receive a management efficiency boost. He now had so much money that specific amounts had lost all meaning. Qin Fan did not remain obsessed with buying cars and luxury watches. He established the Fanyu Technology Charitable Foundation and allocated 10% of the group's annual profits to support young researchers, retraining programs for unemployed workers, and the construction of medical equipment facilities in impoverished regions. At the foundation's first public meeting, one executive cautiously reminded him, Chairman Chen, at the current scale, annual expenditures may reach several billion yuan. Charitable projects rarely generate direct returns. Qin Fan asked in return. Fanmei's factory helped more than 2,000 people return to work. Does that count as a return? Yufan Medical gives epilepsy patients early warnings. Does that count as a return? If money can do nothing except sit in an account and increase a few digits, how is it any different from points in a video game? No one in the conference room objected again. The system screen flickered gently before him. Special achievement detected. The value of wealth. Reward. All charitable expenditures will also count towards system upgrade progress. Current level raised to LV9. Qin Fan looked at the notification and suddenly smiled. This so-called tycoon system had apparently never been designed merely to teach him how to spend money. It had shown him desire, but it had also taught him how to choose. 2 years later, Fanmei apparel had become one of the most popular mass-market brands in China. Yet it still preserved the original small shop on Yunjin Commercial Street. Lu Mei would occasionally sit in the store herself in hem pants for long-time customers. Someone recognized her as the mother of the founder of a brand worth tens of billions of yuan and asked in astonishment, Boss Lu, you still handle small transactions worth only a few dozen yuan? Lu Mei smiled. It doesn't matter whether clothes are expensive. What matters is that they're comfortable and worth the money. Chen Guoliang became the strictest quality supervisor in the entire group. Any supplier who tried to cut corners was thrown out immediately. One executive once tried to give him a watch worth several 100,000 yuan, only for Chen Guoliang to shove it straight back. The watch my son gave me is still sitting unworn in a drawer. Don't test me with things like this. As for their former landlady, Wang Xiqin, after learning that Qin Fan had become the richest man in Jiangbei, she brought her son to Yunjin Commercial Street to beg for work. She stood outside the shop crying so hard that tears and mucus ran down her face. Little Chen, Auntie was ignorant before. Now that you're so successful, just arrange a manager's position for Li Hu. Qin Fan glanced at Li Hu. What can he do? Wang Xiqin hurriedly said. He knows a lot about cars. He studies supercars every day. Does he have a driver's license? He's taken the test 3 times but hasn't passed yet. Qin Fan nodded. Then he can start loading and unloading in the logistics warehouse. The probation period is 3 months. If he works seriously, he can stay. If he refuses, he can go home and continue studying supercars. Wang Xiqin still wanted a bargain, but Liu gritted his teeth and agreed. 3 months later, he had actually lost more than 20 pounds and earned a paycheck through his own labor for the first time. Chen Fan did not destroy them because of their past humiliation. But neither did he allow them to gain something without working for it. What he offered was an opportunity, not a privilege. Xiao Xia also contacted Chen Fan several times. At first she used rental issues as an excuse. Later, she said she had always regretted that matchmaking date. The last time, she sent him a very long message. If I hadn't walked away that day, would we already be married now? Chen Fan replied with only one sentence. No, what you looked down on that day wasn't my lack of money. It was the person you believed had no money. Then he deleted her contact information. Some people missed their chance not because they were unlucky. They missed it because they had never truly seen the person standing in front of them. After Qin Yushuan's research entered the clinical phase, she finally received a short vacation. On her first day back in Jiangbei, Lu Mei pulled her away to look at wedding dresses. Qin Yushuan was so embarrassed that she did not know what to do. Auntie, we haven't even discussed marriage yet. Lu Mei deliberately put on a stern face. If he won't discuss it, I'll discuss it for him. What if someone else steals such a wonderful woman away because he waits too long? Standing beside them, Chen Fan immediately raised his hand. Mom, I've already prepared for this. Prepared what? A proposal. Qin Yushuan abruptly turned her head. When did you start preparing? From the moment you gave me that bank card at Shanghai airport. 1 week later, Chen Fan brought her to Miss Cafe restaurant beside the river in Jiangbei. It was the place where they had shared their first true date after reuniting. The restaurant had not been cleared out, and ordinary customers still sat around them. Qin Yushuan asked in confusion, Didn't you say you were taking me out for a late-night snack? It's a late-night snack. And a repayment. Chen Fan took out the bank card she had once pressed into his hand. Of the 130,000 yuan inside, we spent only a little over 30,000. I used the rest to buy something. What? A server brought over a completely ordinary little box. When Qin Yushuan opened it, she found a simply designed diamond ring inside. The diamond was not extravagant, and its price was far below that of the star of the deep sea. Chen Fan said seriously, This ring wasn't bought with system money or company money. It was purchased with our shared travel fund. Yushuan, I can give you mansions, companies, and jewelry. I can also give you more money than you could spend in a lifetime. But more than that, I want to use money belonging to both of us to buy a future that belongs to both of us. He lowered himself onto one knee. The surrounding customers quickly fell silent. Qin Yushuan, will you marry me? Qin Yushuan covered her mouth, and tears fell instantly. She did not deliberately make him wait, nor did she deliver any elaborate speech. She simply nodded hard. Yes. Applause and cheers erupted at the same time. Hong Moli crawled out from beneath a nearby table, holding up her phone and shouting, I got it. I recorded everything. 1 euro ran out as well. Yushuan, you agreed too quickly. We didn't get to use any of the tests we prepared. Laughing and crying at once, Qin Yushuan asked, Why are all of you here? Chen Fan slipped the ring onto her finger. Because not one of the important people could be missing. The wedding was scheduled for the following spring. Chen Fan rejected every proposal involving a private island overseas or a top-tier palace. In the end, he chose the lawn created from the renovated grounds of Fanmei's old factory. Guests included Shanghai technology executives, medical experts, ordinary workers, longtime merchants from Yunjin Commercial Street, and the old classmates Chen Fan truly valued. Chen Liang served as best man and was so nervous that he held the ring box upside down 3 times. Wang Haoqi, Hu Jinsong, and the others who had mocked Chen Fan at the reunion received no invitations. They could watch the wedding only through the news live stream. Yang Wenjing and Du Lei had long since divorced because of their mutual suspicion. Du Lei's company had also gone bankrupt after a tax investigation. Yang Wenjing stared at Qin Yushuan in her wedding dress on the screen and remained silent for a long time. She finally understood that what she had truly missed back then was never merely wealth. It was a man who had deserved to be treated seriously even before he possessed a system or a supercar. Just before the wedding ceremony began, a light rain suddenly started falling. The staff hurried to prepare an indoor relocation, but Qin Yushuan stopped Chen Fan. Do you remember that night on the hilltop? I remember. That night was dangerous and chaotic. But from that day forward, I never doubted that you would protect me. She looked up at the fine rain and smiled gently. So we don't need to move. Whether the rain stops or not won't change the fact that I'm marrying you. Chen Fan tightened his grip on her hand. The two exchanged their vows in the rain. At the exact moment they exchanged rings, The system sounded a notification for the first time in a long while. Ding! The host has completed the ultimate hidden mission. Mission name: The True Tycoon. Mission description: possess wealth without being possessed by wealth. Gain power without abusing power. Accept love while respecting love. System level raised to LV10. Ultimate privilege: all base earnings belonging to the host are permanently legalized. The system will no longer impose upgrade requirements. The 70 billion red envelope function will be retained permanently. The host may choose each day whether to activate it. Chen Fan looked at the screen visible only to him and felt extraordinarily calm. When he first obtained the system, he had been so excited that he wanted to claim every single red envelope. The 70 billion red envelopes were still there, but he did not immediately reach for them. Qin Yuxuan gently nudged him. Why are you spacing out? Chen Fan closed the system screen and pulled her into his arms. Nothing. I just suddenly realized that I've already received the best red envelope of all. Leaning against his shoulder, Qin Yuxuan asked softly, how much was it worth? Priceless. In the third year after their wedding, the neural monitoring equipment developed by Yufan Medical officially entered more than 1,000 hospitals across China. Fanmei Apparel opened stores overseas while continuing to maintain mass-market prices. The Fanyu Charitable Foundation helped tens of thousands of unemployed workers receive new skills training and funded hundreds of young research teams. The precise amount of Chen Fan's wealth had long since become impossible to calculate. Some called him the richest man in Asia. Others called him the most mysterious controller of capital. Still others guessed that an unimaginably powerful family stood behind him. Chen Fan never explained himself in interviews. A reporter once asked him, Mr. Chen, was the luckiest day of your life the day you obtained your first enormous fortune? Chen Fan thought for a moment. No. Then which day was it? The day my matchmaking date failed. The reporter froze. Why? Chen Fan smiled and looked into the distance. Qin Yuxuan was standing in the sunlight, waiting for him while holding their 1-year-old daughter. Because from that day on, I finally saw clearly who needed to leave and who was worth spending my entire life holding on to. After the interview ended, he walked over and took his daughter into his arms. The little girl grabbed his finger and giggled. The phone in his pocket vibrated gently. Ding! Today's 70 billion red envelopes have arrived. Activate them? Chen Fan glanced at the time. It was exactly noon. He handed the phone to Qin Yuxuan. You tap it today. Qin Yuxuan looked puzzled. Tap what? A little game. She casually tapped confirm. A red envelope jumped onto the screen. Ding! Congratulations. You have received 1 yuan in cash. Qin Yuxuan could not help laughing. Only 1 yuan? Chen Fan laughed too. That's pretty good. Holding his daughter in one arm and his wife's hand in the other, he slowly walked toward their family. Whether it was 1 yuan or 1 trillion yuan made no difference. What had truly made him the strongest tycoon was never the number in his bank account. It was the fact that he finally possessed the ability to protect his family, respect the woman he loved, change his own destiny, and help others change theirs. This time, the system issued no further notification. Sunlight fell across them, and in that moment, the story found its most perfect answer.